Hi, everybody. How you guys doing? This is Wavy Thoughts and Talks. This is basically a series on my channel where I interview people with different mental health conditions. I try to destigmatize disorders and humanize people afflicted with them. So the best way to watch these interviews, maybe even this one as well, is from a non-judgmental, unbiased point of view. Basically, what I'm trying to do is put myself in someone else's shoes, get their point of view, and empathize with them too. So I hope you do the same. With that being said, please introduce yourself and tell the people what you got going on.
Okay, well, my name is John, and I was diagnosed with NPD at age 18, and at this point, decades later, literally decades later, I would say that I'm probably not a flaming NPD at this point. I probably never was actually, but what I can say is that over the years and years, I do believe that I'm very cluster B, and that is a very real thing for me to be cluster B. And I, over the years, I guess the main thing, aside from just having a difficult life and having a lot of problems, really a lot of problems, I would say the main thing that I'm left with right now is I just feel like psychology. Honestly, no offense, but I feel like psychology could do a much better job of explaining it and helping people understand what they're dealing with. Because I
I,
think
I agree. I agree with that as well. I agree with, and then not to say that they don't know what they're talking about. They've obviously built up a body of work that, I don't go to school for any of this, but that I've studied on my own from reliable sources, and I believe that they're like halfway there. But like I also believe that they explain the outside symptom criteria, but not the reasons why, and that's always bothered me. So
yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's like the outers, but not the inners, right? It's like, okay, I get the outers now, so that's why I wanted to do this, you know?
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I don't know. I mean, I think, like you said, I mean, I think we should admire, we should respect what psychology has been able to build up over the years. But the thing is that you always have to do better. We can, wherever we're at, we can always improve more. And
Exactly.
I think at this point, I think the problem I see with psychology is that it's hard to put it into words exactly because there's a lot of issues. But the main thing I see is that it's almost like psychology almost believes like the stereotypes of these disorders, and that kind of like is an interference from getting to know what's really happening. That's all I'm going to say. It's just kind of like getting too caught up in the stereotype. And I think that getting too caught up in the stereotype is almost like what happens in actual narcissism, which is kind of weird. It's almost like
Yeah. Yeah.
the science of psychology is almost trapped in a narcissistic process of getting way too distracted with a stereotype and not really seeing clearly into the root of what's really happening. I know, of course, I will say that getting to the root is a mystery, really, because it probably has a lot to do with the neuro like the neurology of it,
Yeah.
and
Well,
that's
you know
like
what?
you can't expect a psychologist to really know that,
Yeah.
to
But
and
what we're gonna do right now is try to get a little bit there. Well, like I said, we're not gonna be able to figure out the root cause for this. And I've done other interviews with people who have narcissistic personality disorder, and even though I'm trying to destigmatize any disorder that if any person that I interview, obviously this is the hardest to do. So I'm not going to be, and I want to say this for everyone watching while we're still during the beginning of the interview, I'm not going to be demonizing anybody. I'm not going to be judging anybody. I said that in the beginning as the intro, but I want people to understand that I am literally just trying to figure out the inner workings of whose brain works so much differently than mine. Don't mean that in a judgmental way. Don't mean that in any type of offensive way. But that's my point, and that's actually my point of doing this with anyone I interview. But
yeah.
I just I have a special. I personally know a lot about cluster B personality disorders, and it fascinates me the levels that it goes into. So all right, so you said you were diagnosed at 18.
Yeah.
Would you mind saying how old you are now?
Yeah, I'm 53.
So 30, 35 years, 35 years.
Yeah, yeah. It's
So
it's been
so
it's been really rough, actually.
so that's a that okay. So that is a long time. That is
Mhm.
I'm about to turn 32, so you were diagnosed before I was born. You look good for your age, by the way, though, bro. You look good for your age.
Well,
I would have said like 40 maybe or something. But
okay.
then again, I have a baby face, and people say they never think that I'm 32. So we just but you're also the same lineage that I am though as well. Similar, very similar. You're Colombian and Scottish. I'm Ecuadorian and Irish. It's the
That's
same,
too crazy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I think we get it from our South American roots, but who knows? My dad he's Ecuadorian. He still has a full head of hair. He's like 65. But anyway, so okay, so you were I'm sorry, I got into the whole thing. You were
No, that's
diagnosed
good.
at 18. It's been 35 years. Obviously, a very long road. What led to you being diagnosed at 18? And also, I don't remember what diagnostical statistical manual it was at that time frame 35 years
Okay.
ago. Maybe it was number 2 or 3, but it was
It
also
was three. It
they
was
would
the
have
three.
diagnosed narcissistic personality disorder differently back then than how it's diagnosed
Probably.
now.
Probably.
So if
Yeah.
you want to get into all of that,
Oh
that would
yeah.
be great.
Okay. Well, actually, it's funny because I didn't have like how would I put it? There was nothing really too crazy about my life as a teenager, but at the same time, I had problems. I mean, the main problem I had, I was probably more on the side of being like a typical like a nerd, like a
Mhm.
person that just doesn't have any friends. It's just likes to take math classes and whatever. So I was kind of like already kind of a misfit, but I never thought of I never thought I had a disorder, but I do know that I had a lot of trouble. I had a lot of trouble relating to people. And also I had a lot of trouble kind of accidentally pissing people off, without understanding why, what I did, So I was kind of like,
Accidentally, it was because, and if I say anything incorrect,
oh
correct
no, 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 that's cool.
if you're accidentally um ticking people off, but you're viewing it maybe because not so much projecting your beliefs on other people, but so much that it's hard to put yourself in that person's shoes to even understand why they'd be offended in the first place. Is that
Maybe a little bit like
thought
like I
process
was
or
kind of like I was on a different wavelength, like I was tuned into a different radio station than other people, maybe a little bit. Like sometimes I would like take a chance to say something I thought was funny, and then it turns out I said something that was really uncool, and I didn't have any clue, what I
mm,
was doing. And then when someone got upset, I'm like, I don't want to be doing this, and I'm like, what's wrong with me? I'm not calibrated to other people, something like that.
yeah.
And then also, like, sometimes I would actually end up doing things that just a little bit, not terrible, but that were just a little bit malicious, and I just thought it was just kidding, just being funny, but other people could really see that this guy's got some issues, and so, like, it never got to the point where it was like a crisis in my life, but at some point, being a teenager, it was real clear that I wasn't really fitting in, and I wasn't really, probably, I could tell over time. I didn't understand it, but I could tell over time I probably wasn't a very nice person, or I probably didn't have my shit together,
Okay,
in
I
some
have a
way.
question. I have a question now because we're talking about your teenage years. So this is a very developmental time for everybody. This
Oh
is
yeah.
this chaotic time. I've been saying this in almost every interview, or not every, but this is my first interview with my friend Jacob, who has cerebral palsy, and I went to high school with him, so I know what it was like for him being in a wheelchair during high school.
Oh
And so
yeah.
we talk about all this different type of stuff. High school is a very hard time for anyone to find themselves individually.
Yeah.
Did you notice? Because from what I've heard it from people who have custody personality disorders, is that they notice uh, um, how other people have a strong sense of self, or a strong personality, or a strong identity, or just a certain identity that is naturally them, that they don't have to
Okay.
put on. Were you experiencing any of that yet while you were
Okay.
a teenager, or
Okay. Well,
if
actually,
at all? If at
probably
all?
no, no, no. I think it's actually a really good question. I think in my mind, I think I thought I was a very complete person in my mind. I thought I was, but looking back, I can tell that I probably, uh, how could I put it? I probably didn't have a very integrated identity. You know what I mean? But at
Yes.
the time, I didn't. The one thing, now here's where I'm maybe a little different than other NPDs that I've seen on YouTube and stuff. I think in my case, it was pretty clear to me. It's been clear to me my whole life that I'm not the kind that have like a lot of self-awareness. Okay. I know like you and I have talked a lot, and I think you mentioned stuff like you thought I was kind of insightful and stuff. And I think I can be insightful, but I've always had a lot of issues with self-awareness in real time. You know what I mean? Like real time self-awareness. So like I'll end up doing
Okay, in the
stuff that
moment, in the exact moment,
yeah,
you're not self-aware of the repercussions of your actions, or even just the outcomes of your actions
yeah.
in the
It's
moment
almost like
of it.
it's almost like I have to look back and see, okay, what did I, oh, now I get it. Yeah, but it's too late. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
too late.
yeah.
So like that's the thing. So at the time, I probably thought I was a very complete person, but when looking back, I think I actually was kind of an empty kind of didn't really have it all together. You know what I mean? Kind
Hmm.
of. So I didn't sense it at the time, but I'll tell you one thing I did sense. I could always tell it was like a radar. I could always tell people who were more normal than me and were more healthy than me. I could always tell. It was like it was like an instinct, you
Okay.
know. I could just tell, yeah, he's got it. He's a solid, his parents must be really nice and he
Was
must
that
come from
was
one of
that
those.
based was that based off just because you knew the person a decent amount, or is that just your
No, I could
perception because
sense
you
it.
saw
I could
them
just
walking down
sense
the
it. That
street, you see this guy, and you just think,
well, okay, let's say just a little more than that,
you get what I'm
but
getting at, right? Like someone you really know and someone you just kind of see. So like, where would be the point where you could sense that?
I would say just being in class with other people, that kind of thing. Just being
Okay.
in class with other people. I could just kind of tell, hey,
So they were genuinely happy in life.
yeah, just I would say just healthier, like better. Oh, yeah, I'll put it in more honest terms. I probably thought they were better quality people. You know what I mean? That's probably how I would think of how I thought of it at the time.
That's not the same as hierarchical thinking.
Well,
Like,
no. I think why not be
is it the
good? I
hierarchy
mean,
or no?
I think I probably didn't realize it, but I think I was probably sensing it like that. Yeah.
Okay.
Because, to be honest, like I'm going to be honest about this. I don't think I don't think it's all just BS. I think there's some truth to it. In other words, I think it's natural if you have issues and you notice other people really having it together, it's natural to kind of be kind of like, damn, these other people, they have it together.
All
It's
right.
kind of like if I'm playing basketball, if I think I'm good at basketball and then I'm playing suddenly with some guy who's 6'3" and he's like playing college basketball, I'm like, whoa, this guy's so good. It hits you, you
Um.
feel it.
Okay. I have a good analogy, and this would be based on not so much people's skill level or whatever, but their what they are as how they are as a person. So if you wanted to have somewhat type of dichotomous thinking and maybe labeling something black or white, um, uh, like I don't I try not to judge people, you know.
Of course.
I've gone through so I've been homeless.
Yeah,
Um
yeah,
I've been robbed at gunpoint, I've been jumped, I've done things I'm not 100% proud of.
yeah.
I'll just put it like that, for you too. But and I would wish that someone would give me a second chance and stuff like that. So because I have gone through things, I wish the same for other people in a way. But
Okay.
I will say there are certain things like a guy hitting a girl, or even a girl hitting a guy. To be honest, either
Okay.
I'm not gonna be a misogynistic or whatever, but
Oh,
that's not tolerable. And I understand in the heat of the moment that there is a passion and that there's a certain level of I've been through, not that I
yeah.
hate women, I've been through domestic violence in certain ways, and I think there are I do have certain core beliefs. I think hitting a woman is wrong. I believe I believe rape is wrong. I should have said
Okay.
the word. I believe murder is wrong. So I do have certain core beliefs and values that I feel like you should not do to another. Not so much religious biblically, but just so I sort of believe with the Ten Commandments, basically.
I
Uh,
get it.
my last trip to Florida to see my siblings, I'm walking out of the gas station. I see a pregnant lady with a belly like this, high out of her mind, smoking a cigarette, and I sympathize with anyone who's going through addiction. I sympathize through, but to me, it's like there's just such a callousness. This might be the word, or
Okay.
and
All
it's
right.
like so. You were saying how that in a certain way it is okay to judge people and have a hierarchical thinking. I'm not exactly
Okay.
saying that person is the worst person or bad or wrong or evil, but it's like in my head, I'm like, come on, shorty, what are you doing?
Okay, man. Okay, so I think at that time when I was in high school, I probably didn't go so far as to say I think this person's better than me. I probably didn't think it like that.
Or
But
worse.
I probably thought, just looking at other people, it was clear that some people were more healthier, were probably just more solid, probably just better quality, you know. And I probably
Okay.
didn't think they were better. I just thought, well, there's just people that are better quality, you know,
Yeah.
without
Yeah.
going any further than that. But you know, I noticed that kind of stuff, and I guess just naturally, and I don't think there's any shame in it. I don't think it's pathological. I think I just felt kind of like, hey, well, I guess I'm not one of those people, you know. I
Yeah.
mean,
You know,
and I had to kind of like you know, maybe not feel great about that, you know, but that was just, it seemed just to me like a fact, you know.
would you mind speaking on your and yeah, it's just the fact that I'm better at this or whatever. It's not so much of an emotional thing. It's just like it is what it is. I get that.
Yeah.
Would you mind speaking on your upbringing at all, with
Oh yeah,
your
absolutely. Well,
relationship with your
okay.
mother or your father, or
Absolutely.
lack
Yeah.
thereof, or whatever the case
Yeah.
may be?
There's no question that both my parents are cluster B. There's no question. I mean, there's just they're solid cluster Bs. Now, when I was growing up, you know, starting really young, I probably didn't know any better. I was just you know, but what I can tell you is that at no time in my family was there any like really severe call it severe chaos. You know, it wasn't severe, but
Abuse, so,
well, no,
abuse.
I mean there probably was some, but it probably wasn't severe. Okay,
You weren't like locked
I
in a
got the hell
basement.
spanked out of me, but you know, spanking. I mean, I'm
Okay.
not going to call that.
You weren't like
I'm not going to
locked in
call
a
it
closet,
trauma. I'll call it.
chained up.
I'll call it rough. You know, rough stuff. You know.
Okay.
Um, but I will say that the just I think it was probably worse for me just to see my parents like have a real like let's see, I think the internet got a little paused. Let's see.
You're fine on my end.
Okay. No, okay, so what I'll say is that I think it was almost scarier as a kid to have like a blast of like someone's really bad temper, like a real bad blast of a bad temper. That was like scarier to me than getting spanked, you know. That's just how.
Was seeing the person that you care for, or that's supposed to care for you the most, uh just turn in a way.
Yeah, and also like there's something about when the voice goes up and there's like an explosion, you know, how sometimes when people
This
are like really
sensory
upset,
overload.
it's like explosive, and it's like, man, it's like someone I really care about is like a monster, you know. It's like it's frightening, you know, even though it's not like somebody puts a gun to your head, but it's a big shock for a young kid to have someone you care about so much get into that
How
real
young, if you don't mind me
oh
asking?
no, I'm sure, you know,
When
I
was the first
think
time you kind of remembered this happening?
I can remember probably as early as like 3 years old, you know, being really uncomfortable with how my mom would get, you know, in these terrible bad moods, where when she was having like a crisis or whatever, she'd just be between crying and yelling. And, you know, it seemed to me like it was too much, you know. And I think even as a really young person, I think like say 3 or 4 years old, the instinct in me was like, this is off the charts. Like this is off the charts to the point that there's something not right about it. You know what I mean? So
Hmm.
I think always I thought of my family from the earliest stage. There's something not right about us. You know, there's something not right. You know, that's just how the feeling I had. You know, but it wasn't like I was terrified. It was more like when I would be around these bad mood explosions and all this kind of stuff, it would just like it just felt like there's something not right, and it was very uncomfortable, you know, and sometimes kind of scary, but you know. So that was kind of like the environment, you know, just being around people that could have real bad moods. And the other thing too, like
I have a
when my dad
Oh, I'm sorry.
either like when either my mom or dad would have like a real bad episode of or like a bad mood, they would say things that were really hurtful, you know.
Yeah.
So like just being around that, like I'm not going to call that trauma, and there's a reason why I'm not going to call that trauma, because I think trauma should be saved for the people that had to watch their dad kill their mother in front of them, you know, or
Yeah.
somebody, you know.
Trauma could be a little it could be a little
more extreme.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, like I want to save respect for the people that have had real traumas, you know. Or let's say there was one day that I was driving with my dad and we got hit by a truck, you know, and like we both were unconscious or something. Like anything like on that extreme level, you know, I want to respect the people that have had those traumas, you know. So I think that for those of us that went through like the terror of, you know, my dad yelling, or, you know, or even watching like say a little bit of minor violence in the house or something like that, I think I want to call it something, but I just don't want to say trauma because
Can
I
I
want
say
to save
something?
that. Yeah.
Can I say something? Is there a possibility, just because from what I'm getting, um, you're basically, there was at one point you said that, but it wasn't that bad because you know, you don't want to overplay the word trauma and everything,
Yeah.
which is actually admirable. I get the point of what you're trying to say. You know,
Oh yeah.
I've been through some things, so I understand trauma to a certain extent. But I believe NPD to be closer to like some type of like CPTSD, if something constantly happening on a day
Yeah.
to day, that is over time changing you. It's not just like, oh, like that one time I was robbed at gunpoint and now
Yeah.
like I'm scared of, you know, whatever. Like no, it's multiple things. Do you feel like
Yeah.
maybe you are saying that it isn't that bad because you're trying to underplay it, either because that's just your realistic view on it, and you maybe the way you compare it to other people that you've also heard about, or are you maybe underplaying it because they're and I know you're older now and you found a lot of ways to get through things and you don't have as many triggers or whatever, but is it also possible way that you are underplaying your experience and it might have been more serious than you actually thought it was, but you don't want to
Okay.
seem weak?
Okay, no, okay. I am saying it because I just want to be
I
fair to
said
the
that was a
people
lot.
that.
I'm so
Oh
sorry.
no,
It's so hard that I have to
no,
get it out like that, or I can't.
I get it. No, I think I'm trying to say it from the point of view of just trying to respect people who've had more extreme experience,
Mm,
just out of respect. And also, I think
okay.
I have a disagreement. Now, it's not a disrespect. I don't disrespect psychology, but I think psychology likes to throw around a lot of buzzwords, you know. And I think that when trauma becomes a buzzword, it becomes a cheap word that we're weakening the word that could have value for the people that really have had the more extreme experiences. And so like I'm perfectly comfortable saying that what I experienced was harmful, you know, and what I experienced really changed me for life, maybe, you know, or it had a lot to do with how I turned out. You know what I mean? But I think I just want to be fair. And I think psychology has to have integrity in its vocabulary, because if you don't have integrity in vocabulary, you can start to dilute the meaning of things, you know. And I think you have to be really scrupulous about having a good meaning, you know, and
Yeah,
meaning things
yeah.
exactly as they are.
I did an interview with my friend Charlie, who I mentioned to you off camera, who has autism. And then as soon as I said ASD, autism spectrum disorder, his first thing was, you know, well, they're using the word disorder just because we think a little bit differently than 99% of other people, but it doesn't mean that we're disordered. And now, I mean, with NPD, it might be different because there's so much
Maybe.
turmoil and because of the out, it affects people around the person.
Yeah.
But
And also, like,
still,
I also disagree. I disagree with disorder too, even for the
I try
personality.
to say condition lots of the
Oh
time.
yeah, no.
I try
But
my
I
best
also
to say
did.
condition ever since he
I
said
disagree.
that.
Yeah, I disagree with the use of disorder, because I think that's psychiatry's narcissism, where psychiatry wants to feel like they're on the same level as, like, you know, like cardiology or like you know, like neurology. Like, hey, we have disorders too. Hey, just because you call yourself a doctor and you want to be like other doctors, that doesn't mean that these mental things are all disorders. You know, like I agree. For example, I agree that Alzheimer's is a disorder. I agree that dementia is a disorder. I agree,
You
maybe
believe
even the skit.
ADHD is a disorder?
You know, to be honest,
Well, you know I got ADHD.
you know what? I think I would be happy to call it a condition. But you know,
Okay, I
we
could
could
deal with
leave that on
that.
the table. We could leave that on the table. But I would say maybe like I personally feel that like schizophrenia can be a disorder. I do see that. Yeah. But you know, I think the personality disorders, to me, they're just extreme versions of human personality, you know. And so to me, instead of calling it a disorder, I would just say, you know, there are groups of people that fall at the real extremes of certain human characteristics that when you're at the extreme of anything, you're going to have issues, you know? And so learning to live at the extremes is a real challenge for people,
And
you know?
I always try to find the balance in everything, which is, you know, not to bring up dichotomous thinking again, but it's, I always see things in the gray because I always try to find a balance for everything. Even when I'm being, and I have negative, intrusive thoughts, and I have thoughts telling me in my head that I'm not doing this, I'm not doing this, I should be doing this. Look at your apartment, look at it, do this, do this, do this. You shouldn't be doing this. I have to not rationalize it in a way where I'm making it okay, but I have to mitigate it. I have to
Yeah.
mitigate appropriately to what's realistic and what is my brain just playing tricks on me for. So
Yeah.
um yeah, okay. So hold on, let's get back into what we're here for.
Yeah. So you were asking me about like why I didn't call it trauma. Like, was I just trying to minimize it? And I'll be honest, like I'm not trying to minimize it. I just want to put it right where it's at. You know what I
No,
mean?
I'm not saying you're doing it a in any negative way, just for because your own perspective views it as it wasn't that bad, when another person from the outside might
Oh yeah,
look
yeah,
at
yeah,
it
yeah.
and say, "Hey, listen, you were kind of going through some stuff there, John."
Yes.
But because you know,
Well, and also
they have their own temperament to
that's
trauma.
right.
So
That's
I'm sorry,
right.
keep going.
And so there is that subjective part. And I will say that when I experienced it, I felt it was extreme because I was experiencing it. Okay. But as an older person now looking back, I just want to be fair and I don't want to try to say, oh, everybody has trauma just because they felt a certain way. I mean, to be honest, I think what I had was I just grew up in a really chaotic, really hostile environment. You know, that
Do
I think that's
you
probably a fair way to say it.
do you feel like you were able to be emotionally expressive to your parents?
You know, to be honest, I don't think they really cared that much about my emotions, and in the sense that if I had them, I don't think they had a problem with it, you know. So, and I also, my parents are both cluster B, but I don't think they were like so bad that they couldn't handle my emotions or whatever. I think they were fine. I think the problem in my family was more just real bad tempers, real bad explosions, lack of control, like anger management kind of, and just how when my dad and my mom could get in their bad moods, they would change and they would say things they would not want to say, and it's like as a child I kind of like felt it gave me low self-esteem to see my parents like that, because I could tell my parents didn't have control of themselves, you see. And it's kind of like watching your dad like take a crap, in his pants or something. It's like, even though it's a mean temper and it's all intimidating, it's also like he just took a crap. It's like my dad doesn't have control of himself. And it's like it made me feel shame for the whole family, that we're those kind of people. We can't control ourselves. It was like it went straight into the low self-esteem. Like we're just those kind of people. And that started super young.
Do you feel we talked off camera? We talked for a little bit the other night. Yeah. You mentioned chronic stress? Do you feel like the chronic stress from your environment made you neurotic at all?
I don't know what
Like the
the
five
exact,
factor model,
yeah. I'll say this. I think that with most cluster Bs and with me and I think with other cluster Bs, I think just being in a chronic environment where you feel things are not right and you feel like your parents are not reliable, you know what I'm saying? Like you just feel like your parents are not reliable. I can't rely on my dad when he's upset not to say something stupid. And I think that made me feel very uneasy all the time, like uneasy, like I'm not comfortable and it's not stable. You know what I mean? And so like you feel like this is not comfortable. And so like you feel like you're in an environment you can't even really trust your parents 100%. And so that puts you on constant alert all the time. It's like crisis. My favorite word, like I'm not going to use trauma because I don't feel like that's fair, but I will say crisis. It's a crisis environment because you can't relax.
well, that's another thing I want to get into. Um, you mentioned what we were talking about, a crisis. So uh, you're more so if you're dealing with somebody, if you're someone who is a neurotypical or even just someone who experiences normal level of empathy and sympathy and all that,
Yeah.
you're in a relationship with someone, or you're, whether it's friendship, your relative, boyfriend, girlfriend, wife, husband, whatever, and you're dealing with someone who might have a cluster B personality disorder. I don't go around diagnosing people, but
Yeah.
it's like you have that person has that. Um, I would get into what you were saying the other day, how you're more likely to see their negative symptomatology when they're in a crisis mode, regardless of what triggered the crisis mode. But I like the way
Okay.
you articulated that, the fight or
Okay.
flight type of, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, okay. Like I do think there's a lot of different types of people who have personality disorders. So I think there are some people with, let's just talk about NPD for now, just an NPD. I think there are some NPDs that are constantly, basically constantly on alert, like constantly, the crisis has become like a steady state, like almost like a constant, you know. But I think there are people where it kind of goes up and down a little bit, and the symptoms get worse in certain situations. Okay, so basically, I think it's fair to say that, like in my case, describing how I grew up, um, it's not like we were always in crisis mode, but I think I was always kind of ready for something to happen. You know what I mean? Like ready for the shoe to drop, basically.
I
But
mean, hyper vigilant in a way.
you just kind of never, you can never let your guard down too much, you know?
Exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You
Yeah.
can never let your guard down because you never know what's going to pop around the corner at any moment, because it's historically been proven that it's going to happen. So
Exactly. Yeah. But what I will say is that I think over time, there are some people with personality disorders that you can see that they get worse when there's certain like, triggering environmental, like things in the environment that are, for example, if you can find anybody that has NPD, I guarantee that if you put them in a social situation where they're around a lot of, like, say, intimidating people, where like say if you have someone who has NPD and their big thing is like intelligence, okay, you put them like in a room with a bunch of people that have like PhDs and like master's degrees, and
yeah,
they're
like
all
some
like
type of
like
Harvard
pros.
meeting.
Trust me, or even half that, you know, that is going to trigger them so much. You will see them acting way different than when they're just like in a situation that's
In
not
what
threatening.
way and how?
I
How is
think
it different?
I
In a
just think
scared way?
that
In a scared way, or in a shameful way, or in a nervous way,
I guess like,
or opposite, or in a
okay,
proud way?
I'll try to tell an experience. Okay. There was a time when I ended up going to law school. Okay. There was a time when I went to law school. All right. And before I was in that situation, I was, probably NPD, but probably not that bad. But as soon as I got in that situation, it's like you're around so many people where everything's competitive and people are kind of smart, and people are really working hard to like get good grades because, they're trying to get good jobs and all that. And that environment, and also like the worst trigger for me, worse than the intelligence, was that suddenly I was around a lot of those people that I told you from like high school, where I could tell they were very good quality people. They seem really healthy, they seem good people. And that really triggered me because it really pointed out to me, reminded me that I'm not one of those people,
You used the
so it's
word
like,
yesterday, or not yesterday, the night before, I think, to me, about me, real. Not to toot my own horn, but is that
oh
similar?
no,
Is that a similar way for what you're describing, or am I? Is that
well,
a different thing?
well,
I'm obviously not the
definitely.
most intelligent person that's going to be at a Harvard college, but
No, 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 no. Well, actually, it's funny because I could say that, just to change the subject just a little bit, like you do seem very real, and you seem to have a real knack for understanding people, or you just understand people without even thinking about it. You just like seem very, yeah, very, very real people. And I guess like there probably was a time when I would have been jealous of that. There probably was a time that I would have been jealous of that. I think at this point, I just recognize it, and it's like all I can do is admire it, or appreciate it. Maybe is a better word. Just appreciate there are people that are just very real. But I'll say that at this time, because it was a competitive environment,
yeah,
being like in law school, it was it was very triggering for me, and so I started acting in ways that even I couldn't believe. It brought out like stuff in me, almost like demons, in me, that I couldn't even believe it. Like I would say things, and then 10 minutes later I couldn't believe I said that, you know
yeah.
or
We
I
all
would
got
like,
demons. We all got demons, but some are worse than others.
yeah, or like a typical NPD. Like I was so red hot NPD that probably everybody was diagnosing me in my class because I couldn't help it. I had to raise my hand and ask questions all the time in these classes. But it got to the point where it's so off the charts and so exaggerated that when I look back on it, I'm like, I was trying to like advertise myself as an NPD, but like at the time I was so caught up in just I don't know, just the crisis of just trying to fit in, that I just overdid it. You know what I mean? But it, so like, so when you look at all the disorders, like say the BPD, the NPD, there's one word that I do appreciate from psychology, which is that word dysregulation. They use the word dysregulation. And so what may be happening with NPD is the frying pan gets put real hot. You're in an environment where you're really triggered. And so you think you're just adapting just a little bit, just to be kind of competitive like everybody, and just giving like, that little extra effort. But you don't realize you're actually giving like 500% too much. You know what I mean? Even though you think I'm just trying to participate in class, but really you're like going way out the charts. And so I would call that a dysregulation. You know what I mean? So that's where you can see the tie-in between the NPD and the BPD, because they have dysregulation.
Yeah. I wanted that was a question I had. So what is your take on the differences, the similarities?
Yeah, well, I think basically, from what I can tell, I think NPD, BPD, and even ASPD, I think they're all the same neurology. I think that basically just the same neurology, just that for some reason the BPD, the dysregulation shows up in just a different ways. It just shows up in different ways, but it is dysregulation. And so my hunch is that from what I've seen in the psychology, I think it has to do with a neurological situation. I'm not going to say a neurological disorder, but I just think that there's certain people that have the genetics, so that if you put them in the frying pan of like a early life, having like a family that's like overheated, let's say, like my family was like overheated. It's like the popcorn. It's like the popcorns. If you put the popcorns in a frying pan at enough temperature, they're going to pop. And when they pop, you're going to see that neurological condition, And so I think that basically,
meanwhile, if you were just to let it simmer at a 50 degrees or whatever I don't know how much it takes to make corn seed pop, but if you just simmer it to half that, or even a quarter of that, or 75% to what it might need for that specific individual, you will never get that negative symptom criteria. At least
or you might get close to it, because I do
it might be someone who has struggles with empathy, but they're not on, that's like a subclinical, even like a subclinical. They're just maybe just a little dickish sometimes. Like that's what I told the other dude, Jacob. I was like, maybe the guy isn't a narcissist, maybe he's just a little dickish, like his empathy is lacking. He doesn't have all the inner turmoil and masking and all these other levels of narcissism that we get into, he doesn't have all that. He's just, he woke up on the wrong side of the bed.
But definitely, I do think that there's I'm sure there's something in the neurology of it where I'm just going to go ahead and give what I think is my theory about it. Understanding that,
I like your theory.
That my theory is probably just anybody's theory. I'm just like, we all have theories, but it just, you got to start with something. So I'll start with this theory, and of course we can change the theory later. But the idea is that probably like what the neuroscientists have said is that at least, like say with BPD, they've noticed issues with the amygdala, which is a part of the brain that registers fear and reaction. And so there's issues with the amygdala, and then there's issue with the prefrontal cortex, basically the processing of emotional material to be able to reason through it and process through it. And so basically, I think that something happens. I don't know exactly what happens, but when you grow up in an overheated environment with no security, and you're just kind of on guard all the time, and you can't relax 100%, and you can't trust, and you're just kind of all uptight and just kind of on high alert all the time and stuff, there's something, you're kind of overcooking your brain, and you're not letting your brain develop the normal development to learn how to process emotions, to process situations. And so what'll happen now this is the part where we have to kind of, I'm really going into like a theory, but
now you got me a little emotional right now too. I'm thinking about somebody. Keep going.
Well, I mean, because it is emotional. I mean, it is, because it's actually kind of sad, but
what you're saying is correct. I can't say I know for a fact because I have all these degrees or nothing, but what you're saying is correct. We keep going.
Yeah, so basically, what I'm thinking is that you said something earlier today which really got me, and this I think ties into the neurology part. Okay, you said something about how in science you get like one piece of data, and then you get another piece of data, and then you get another piece of data,
Yeah,
and
yeah. It's
slowly,
like the
slowly.
scientific method. I'm not big. I don't know everything about that, but I follow a similar method in life.
Exactly.
When I hear things from different sources that are unconnected about the same thing, then the amount of truth that went into either one of their statements went all the way up. Like if I hear something from my guy from North
Oh yeah.
Carolina that doesn't know my person from Florida, and they both tell me the same thing about this other person, something like that, then or just whatever, some type of piece of information, then yeah. So keep going.
Yeah. So basically, so like if you have like say 3 sources of information, you're going to have kind of a rough idea. You have like say 20 sources of information, you get a much better idea. And
Mm-hmm.
then say if you get like 5,000 sources of information, you're going to have a real solid. It's like the map gets clearer and clearer. So
Yeah.
the way I look at it, it's like when we look at like say the quality of photographs, we look at like say in digital photography, we look at pixelation, right? And so in pixelation, when you have like really bad pixelation on a photo, it's like you can almost not even make out the photo. You know, it's like it's not accurate. But then as you get a little more pixelation, it starts coming a little more into focus, you know, and then you get more pixels and more pixels, and then it starts to get really clear. You see what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And so what I'm thinking is that when you're growing up in that overheated environment, that overheated environment that's overcooking your brain and getting you on high alert, when you're on high alert, you're not meant to process the same as when you're relaxed, you know what I mean, or when you're secure. And
Yeah.
so if you're chronically insecure, your brain is not going to develop normal patterns of processing information. And so we're preventing the brain from processing more to get better pixelation on how we relate to and understand reality. You see what I mean?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I mean, and that's as it should be, because if I'm actually in a real crisis, like say, let's not talk about a chronic crisis, let's talk about a real crisis. Okay, I don't have time to look at everything and get an accurate picture. I'm just going straight for the target and I'm trying to win, you know, in a real crisis. Okay. So like, so you
Imagine that
understand
all
how it
the
is.
time.
Yeah, but in certain moments you have to have that. Okay. In certain moments, you don't want to be full of information and full of accuracy. You just want to go straight to the target and kill, you know, or whatever. But when you're chronically like that, you're never going to get pixelation, like good pixelation in how you process like situations and especially emotions. Okay. Because a healthy person will learn to get the good pixelation even in an emotional situation. Okay. So I'll give you one example that I think is super clear. Like, let's say, okay, I grew up, I'm trying to make it very real. Like, I grew up very different because I was mixed race. Okay, I was a mixed race kid, right? Because my mom was from a Latin. My mom's
I can understand that. I just don't
Latino.
look
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, no, I know. So, like, say maybe I looked a little more Latino as a kid, and I grew up around a lot of really white people, you know, whatever. And so I always felt kind of ugly, you know, and maybe I wasn't even very good looking, and I'm totally over that. I don't have a complex, right? So that hurt me as a young person to feel like I was not good enough, you know, even in the way I looked, you know. So that hurt. But here's the thing: there's other kids that might have had like say like a deformity, or they might have had much worse than me, or they might have had like say, I don't know, you can imagine things can always be worse. And
Yes.
some of those kids never had a real problem because they were able to process the emotion, because they weren't in a situation where they couldn't pixelate. I'm trying to say, I use the word pixelate because I'm just trying to say,
I kind of have an idea. I do all these analogies all in my head all the time, so I have an idea of what you're trying to say. Um, I I
see,
I hope I don't, but I think it's pretty clear. I think people that are watching are gonna understand what you're saying.
okay,
I
so
don't think I
basically
don't think
like,
it's not too hard to
yeah.
understand. But the way you explained it earlier, up to the point of the story that you just told. So continue.
Yeah, sure. Like just like imagine like what I was going through as a person, like say, you know, having issues of, you know, feeling like I was ugly or feeling like I was, you know, whatever. Imagine like other kids my age that might have had much worse situations. Okay. Or let's say maybe they were even more socially awkward than I was, you know, because there's always extremes to everything, you know. So let's just imagine somebody who has much worse problems than I do, but they have a much healthier, let's say, environment and maybe a better brain, you know, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
And let's just say that there are some people that can process really uncomfortable things, but they don't get stuck because they can process through it and work through it. And then their brain in that process develops a good pixelation for that emotional thing. And so then they're like way ahead, you know, because they're not going to have a complex about that.
They're ahead emotionally, because they're not, there's an emotion, there's some type of stunted growth emotionally when it comes to cluster B. I mean, it could be a lot of people. It doesn't
Yes.
even have to just be cluster B, but I know for cluster B, there is, they say, and I don't mean any offense when I say this, but that people with cluster B, including people with NPD, in a way, have a childlike view,
Yeah.
just
Yes.
because of the all good and all bad. Like I work at
Yes.
Trader Joe's. Kids come by every day. Some of my coworkers that are watching might laugh at this. They give us lollipops to give to the kids, but I always ask the parent first if the kid could have a lollipop. Hey, can the kid have lollipop? I give the lollipop to the kid. The parent's good. I'm good. The kid can't get the lollipop. The parent's bad. I'm bad. And it's a part of, there's something there where it just never fully grows out of that mindset for
Yes.
all
Yes.
cluster Bs. I know,
Yeah.
especially BPD, and I hear it's a thing for NPD too.
Yes. Yes.
ASPD is a little more foggy. The way people with ASPD function is a little bit different, but it's still on the
Okay.
same thing.
Well, I want to try to tie the ASPD to the narcissism and the BPD. Okay.
Yes,
I
do
think
it,
the
do it, do it, do it for me. Do
okay.
it for me so I can
The,
learn.
so then NPD might be a dysregulation when you're trying to, let's say in this in just in life
By the way, hold on. By the
situations.
way, hold on, real quick, real quick, real quick. By the way, anyone watching, ASPD is antisocial personality disorder. It's what people refer to as a sociopath, even though a sociopath isn't an actual clinical diagnosis. You can't be diagnosed a sociopath or a psychopath, but what you are most likely to be diagnosed with is ASPD, and it's a very similar criteria. And when we're speaking about BPD, it's not bipolar disorder, it's borderline personality disorder, which is all of them are in the same cluster of personality disorders out of 10. And there's also a fourth one named HPD. It's a little bit different. It's kind of like narcissism light in a way. It's a little weird, but
Yeah.
anyway, before, because we're naming a lot of acronyms, there might be some people that don't know what any of what the hell we're talking
Okay.
about.
All right.
Now continue. I am sorry for
Okay.
interrupting.
No problem. I would say, like, say when someone has narcissism to the point that it's like a diagnosable condition, okay, I would say there's a dysregulation in thoughts and behaviors about trying to have status in the world, or in how you relate to having status in the world. Okay. So like basically it just has a lot to do with status,
And it's
and
NPD. NPD.
that's narcissism. Yeah, NPD.
Okay.
So it's a dysregulation in how you think and behave around the problem of status in the world, you know,
Okay.
status,
So what would
and
be the, compare the differences and the similarities from NPD to ASPD? Because I hear
okay, so
that person.
it's a dysregulation in thoughts and behavior that have to do with status. Okay, so that's dysregulation. Okay, the BPD is dysregulation with emotions,
Emotion.
basically emotion,
Yeah.
but probably I got to be a little more careful because it's not just emotions. Period. It's the situations that provoke those emotions.
There's
But
a lot more going on to it than just being emotionally
yeah,
dysregulated.
yeah.
But that's for a different video. That's a lot.
But you
But
can see that the common element is a dysregulation,
yes,
probably because these people were under such adverse conditions, they were never able to learn how to integrate and process emotional issues properly. And
which
then
is like
their
the
brain,
pixelation.
yeah, and the brain never got a good pixelation on how to deal with certain emotional issues, you know. Whereas the ASPD is a dysregulation in behavior, just general behavior. So it's dysregulation. You see what I mean? And so I think that dysregulation comes from a very, call it an infantile or a very underdeveloped processing of emotional material, basically.
It's a dysregulation in behavior based on society's views. And I don't always agree with society's view. That's why it's antisocial. It's not that this person isn't avoidant personality disorder. It's antisocial because they're anti-society, quote unquote. But
Yeah.
listen,
Well,
there's
okay,
things.
now I'll say this, like, I'm not going to say antisocial because I think to me social is arbitrary, okay? But I think the real defining thing with what they call ASPD is definitely it's a behavioral dysregulation. I mean, the behavior is dysregulated because their behavior is more extreme, you know. I mean,
To me, from my understanding of it, it's okay. I think there's 7 symptom criteria. I can't remember them
mhm,
all. It's not 9 like how BP and HPD have.
mhm, mhm.
And maybe it is 9. I can't remember it, but you need. I can't remember. I should have looked this up one last time. But you need at least 3. I think 3 out of 7 to qualify, or something along the lines of that.
Plus certain
Um,
things
but
happening
but
before age 15. Yeah.
yeah. Now, so listen, I qualified for. I have ADHD.
Okay.
Not from my understanding, almost every sociopath or person with ASPD has ADHD as well. At
Doesn't
least
surprise me. Yeah.
90% or something, especially with the impulsivity.
Right.
I've heard like 98%. Like almost every single person who has sociopathy or
Uh,
ASPD has ADHD. Now, there's also ODD, which is oppositional defiant disorder.
Oh
I
yeah.
definitely had that as a kid. I like to annoy people. I like. I was definitely defiant. My way or the highway. There's a third symptom criteria. I can't remember. You need a certain amount in 6 months for it to be diagnosed, but literally I would
Yeah.
do it every day. Yeah, I
Yeah.
definitely had conduct disorder. I was definitely
Right.
doing. I wasn't wetting the bed, or at an old a grown somewhat teenage age. I wasn't wetting the bed there. I wasn't setting fires. I wasn't killing animals. I wasn't doing anything like that. But I was breaking the law habitually.
Yeah.
um, and there's a lot of things with because of my ADHD and my prior, and
Right.
the only thing is though, just I believe like if someone disrespects you enough to a certain point, they deserve to get punched in the face. I'm not promoting violence on this channel.
No, I
That
understand.
is just a personal
No,
belief.
I think
But
like
but
the
hold
way
on, I
I
just want
think
to
of
say
it.
one last thing.
Okay.
I experience guilt and remorse, and
Oh
I
yeah.
have general empathy and sympathy. So I'm not trying to sit here and say, "Hey, your boy is a sociopath," but I can relate to it, and that's what I'm trying to do: is
Oh,
empathize with
absolutely.
things. So
Yeah,
keep
and
it
also
moving.
like say going back to like the so-called antisocial disorder. I'll say so-called because I think the definitions are kind of unfair. I think they're unfair because I think
Yeah,
when you don't have a good pixelation, let's say, if you don't have a good pixelation, it's not like you're walking around calmly and saying, I want to violate the rights of other people. I see the rights of this person and I want to violate them. It's not like that. What it is
sometimes it
that
is. Sometimes it is.
well, maybe, but I think maybe on the surface, but I think
And
that,
I'm not saying for you. I'm saying a younger version of me would have said, "Hey, this person in the wrong day, the wrong day." Yeah, so you know
well, but I
it
think
can be.
that but I think maybe at that point, maybe you didn't realize that there was information missing in your process. You know what I mean? Like you
Yeah.
maybe didn't realize it. And so what I'm thinking is that when we're kind of stuck in a very infantile processing of emotions, like we don't have a good pixelation on life in general. Okay. And so I think that we just don't have enough bandwidth. I'll use the word bandwidth. Like we don't have enough mental bandwidth
I'm
and
sorry.
enough pixel.
I don't know what bandwidth means.
Okay, I just mean like basically processing memory,
Is that
like
amount of space
like we don't have enough. We're not processing enough information. Let's say that we're
at a
not.
certain speed, or
Well, just let's say a certain volume of information in real time. You know what
okay,
I
okay,
mean?
okay, okay, okay,
So
okay.
basically, like when you don't have when you haven't integrated your emotional reality, you know what I mean? Like if you can't process your emotions, probably the big emotional challenge for ASPD people is just impulse control. When you have like say impulse control, for things that are pleasurable, for things that are exciting, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
things that get the blood pumping, things that
yeah, like
uh
enthusiasm. Like if you don't have like an adult level of maturity to process that, that's going to over dominate the person,
I
and then
will say,
they're going to lose perspective. You just lose perspective, and so they're not playing really with a full processing brain. You know what I mean? It's like
yeah, they're not playing with
it's
a
not
full
the
deck of
full brain.
cards
Exactly.
mentally.
So I think that we have to be real careful to understand that behavior and life will dysregulate if we don't have that full pixelated process where we got the full information processing in the brain. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like say, especially emotional issues, because what's the big emotional issue? Even for the NPD, it's things that are exciting. It's things that are wonderful, that are enthusiastic, that make you excited, that make you delightful or whatever, stimulating, stimulating.
Ideas of grandeur type of thing.
Yeah, like, and that's the thing. Like, say maybe a healthy person might have minor ideas of grandeur, because
Yes,
even
yes.
like, say a normal person will be like, hey, I'm so happy I got promoted in this job. It's great. I'll be a boss, and it kind of sits in the brain and it just gets washed with all the other ideas. But with the narcissism, because you don't have that pixelation and that processing, it like stands out too much, and it's like
Yeah,
exaggerated.
it's like now, I did this and this is me and this is like,
Yeah.
yeah,
and like and like when we watch someone like that, we're like, oh wow, we're all offended, like how can you be such an asshole? But we don't realize that what's really happening is that person doesn't have enough processing in their brain to bring it down to size. You see what I'm saying?
yeah.
It's kind of like they don't have enough pixelation to bring it down to a natural size, and so it
There's
seems oversized.
there's a certain level of being able to read the room and not being able to read the room simultaneously. Like when I talked to my um Tess, who's a young female with NPD, I brought up to her about how someone that was close with that I was close with, who had a custody personality disorder, described it as they could walk into the room and see who's in control. I think control was the word she used, and I just was like,
Okay.
really? Like when I go to a party or I go to anywhere, I walk in and yeah, I read the room, and especially if we're in a, I don't live in the best neighborhood, so if I walk to a certain area, I'm gonna be looking out real quick for people that might not want my best interest. But like, I don't walk into a room to see who's in a hierarchy or who's in control, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and that's how it was described to me. But I don't.
Okay, like say maybe like say let's say you're in a room with like some really tall people. Let's say you're on room, you might notice who the tallest person is. You might notice it. But like say an NPD person, it might be more emphasized in their thoughts. You know what I mean? It might be more exaggerated. You know what I mean? But it's the same thing as you or anybody else. Like you're at an airport, you notice the biggest plane, like, whoa, that's a big plane. It's like, but you just notice it. Maybe an NPD person, it's like more it is like blown up a little more.
Yeah, because I've heard. I was also told that when I'm in the room, my the person that told me this information about how they view walk into the view, they were saying how I uh can captivate the room in a certain way or something, because I'm very like for here for YouTube, I try to keep it very low. I try to not curse as much. I try to be I'm still myself, but I try to lower it a little bit, bring it down a little bit. But like that I'm very just noticeable, or but like not in control, and I don't do it. But people with ASPD, there's a hunger for power of
Mhm.
some sort. For people with NPD, it's a thing about control.
And also
People,
status, also
people,
status.
yeah, people with ASPD view everyone as a separate attachment from them, but people with NPD somehow view people as an attachment of them. And then people with BPD, it's like this broken highway bridge that was almost there. You can kind of get to the other side if you
Right.
go around this section of the bridge that was just knocked down by Godzilla.
Yeah.
So like, and but so I don't have the power, the goal orientation that someone who has ASPD has. I'm not
Hmm.
goal orientated at all. ADHD kicks my ass in that way, and I'm also not um a chameleon in a way, which is something I also wanted to ask you about. Is there
Okay.
any type of we hear? I always hear this a lot, so as I bring it up in every interview. The mask. What
Okay.
is for you? From my understanding, I'm gonna go real quick. From my understanding,
Okay.
you pick up character traits from other people, whether you personally know them or someone from a movie or a
Okay.
show or something, or you
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
see things on a stranger on the street, like the way he moves.
Sure.
Way. You pick up these character traits, but you consciously apply them to yourself, and then you also, not you specifically, but just whoever might have
Hmm.
um will be able to shift a little bit by the way they are and how they're acting
Okay.
around different people. And but the
Right.
people with ASPD, it's different because they can completely switch
Oh
because
yeah.
there's no outer value to themselves. There's no value. There's no inner value for the outer view of themselves in a way or
Yeah.
something. I might
Right.
go, I'm going all over the place, but yeah,
No, I totally understand. So like we're talking about the
I'm
mask,
making sense, right? I feel
Yeah.
like I'm not
Well,
making
yeah.
sense half the time.
And I think like I've heard of other NPDs. And by the way, I want to make a shout out because like I've been so impressed by the two other NPDs that you interviewed because
Names
they had.
Narcissist Jacob and Spirit Narc Tessa.
Yeah, because I'll tell you, for being so young, they're very talented people. They may have NPD. I'm not going to say they don't have NPD. Of course they do, but let me tell you, they got a lot of talent. You know what I mean? Because they're really like, and also like the courage, just to get in public and just to be
Yo, listen,
completely open.
I say that, man, yo, because anyone that gets on my channel, it's, I mean, I could start doing food reviews at one point. It's as long as it's wavy thoughts and talks. People call me wavy. As long as I'm thoughting and talking, thinking and talking, like then I could do whatever. But I appreciate people from any disorder getting on my channel and speaking about their own personal experience, because I'm learning how hard it is for me to do when I'm trying to empathize with the person. And I go
Yeah.
back, I watch the videos, and I realize, oh, I was a little too personable when I said that. Maybe my needs to know that, David. But especially when it comes to cluster B or NPD, people with
Mhm.
BPD might be more open to share their experience, but and sociopaths definitely not, because that's such a stigmatized thing. They don't
It's
want
very
that to know.
stigmatized.
I
Yeah.
might have to do an interview with someone and have to learn how to blur the whole thing out with just, change their voice. Same with another person with avoidant personality disorder. But I respect everyone that comes on my channel to open up about their experience, especially people with NPD, because of how hard it is to possibly appear weak, or even though
Oh
that's
yeah.
not a symptom criteria. I don't think, being afraid of being weak.
No, but it might as well be a symptom
Yeah,
criteria. I don't
yeah,
think I
yeah.
don't think there's too many NPDs that want to look weak.
Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
if you're not making yourself look weak, or anyone that gets on my channel that has NPD, you're not making yourself look weak. What you're doing is, at least from, I hope, you're getting someone who is trying their best to understand you in a non-judgmental way,
Yeah.
and and trying to break down the inner dialogue, the inner motivations, the inner workings of someone who has NPD, not just
Mhm.
the how to manipulate the narcissist, how to demonize this person that probably went through a whole bunch of childhood trauma and now is fucked
Yeah.
up for the rest of their life. But let's just, and of course they've done some things to somebody to make them feel a certain way, and
Of
maybe
course.
you are justified, but you should not perpetuate the cycle of hate and then try to act like you're on a pedestal, like, oh, I'm better than this person, even though you probably live with this person, watching videos on how to destroy them. It makes no
Right.
sense. Like,
Right.
just do it. If
It's
you're, and also if you're in an abusive situation, get out of that environment ASAP. It's just not,
yeah.
it doesn't matter what acronym person has to them, not attached to them, nothing. Like, just get out of that situation. Do whatever you need to do to save your fucking self.
Yeah.
But I hate the channels that demonize NPD, because when I found out about BPD, then I found out, okay, there's a 50 to 80% chance there's a comorbid condition in cluster B along with that. So now I got to figure out about all these other personality disorders, not even just cluster B. When I started learning about all this stuff, I went down a tiny rabbit hole for a little bit. All these, the narcissism, because I looked at vulnerable narcissism, and it's so close to BPD. It's frightening. I mean, it might as well just be the same diagnosis.
I
Very,
think it's the same. I think it's basically the same brain. I mean,
yeah. And it was just so, I hate it. It was so, I went down the wrong rabbit hole. I went down this rabbit hole by accident. My factual, analytical mind, the way I look things, kind of went out the window for a second, and I started feeling justified. But I wasn't actually pursuing any negative activities towards this other person I was with. I was just watching these videos for information. Then I
mhm.
realized it started warping my brain, because this isn't factual information. So I stayed with people like Dr. Grande, Dr. Romney, Dr. Fox. Um,
Mhm.
um, oh man,
Well, hey, look,
I got like
yeah,
three, four more. Like, just
yeah,
and actually researching actual research literature, and going,
yeah.
reading the DSM-5.
Right. Well, let me just say something. I feel very similar to you. Like I get annoyed by those approaches, but I can't really blame them
You
because
can't. That's the thing.
because psychology makes it easy for people to think like that. I'm sorry, and I don't mean to be like anti-psychology. I'm not anti-psychology, but unfortunately, psychology as it stands today presents these disorders as a stereotype. Okay, and so psychology, when you look at the DSM, whatever the DSM,
Five.
you're not looking,
We're on the
you're
five.
not Yeah, you're not looking at like the root cause of these disorders. You're just looking at a bunch of unpleasant symptoms.
That
You
was the
know that.
most. That was the most. Because the reason why I do these, I like to know how people tick. Knowing I
Mhm,
like know what people tick is what makes me tick, and it was
mhm.
pissing me off that I couldn't get an answer on why people are like this. Okay, so
Yeah,
why?
exactly. So like if
What are
psychology,
symptoms? Okay, cool, I
psycho
get that.
basically like you'll forgive me, everybody will forgive me for I'm going to be I can also give a stereotype of psychology, and I think it's fair to give a stereotype
Speak your
of
mind. Speak
psychology.
your mind, bro. Speak your mind.
Yeah, they basically first they assume that personalities never change. Basically they assume that personalities are basically permanent, and then they basically say that there are certain personalities that are just essentially just very bad. There's just a bunch of symptoms that are just, it's all about abusing and being a jerk and whatever. So if psychology presents it like that, and psychologists will be very open, we don't have a proven method for treating NPD that's proven to be effective. And basically, you can't forgive people for thinking, well, shit, if that's what this is, then these are just some bad people, and whatever. So I can't blame them. But
I won't
so,
disagree. I won't disagree. But what I will say is, at the same time, we're all human, and
oh
we're
no, of
just trying
course.
to figure out what something is. And I know you would have probably got to that point. But
Mhm.
another thing is, I do I believe that it should, the way it's done should be tweaked.
Oh yeah.
I'm just not smart enough. Maybe who knows, man. My coworker who's 30 years a social worker, a therapist, psychologist, or a psychiatrist has told me to get into this because he thinks I would be really good. But I
Yeah.
don't. But I don't personally don't think I'm intelligent enough to be able to do all that. But at least change the world in that way. But it should be tweaked more on the motivations than the symptoms. And that was the first thing that bugged me out about BPD, NPD
Yeah.
was, okay, so why
Yeah, I mean,
and
frankly,
how?
I think basically, like, I think until psychology becomes more mature as a science, like here's the thing. Psychology, they present these personalities sort of as like, okay, these are things that can never change, these are blah blah blah. And basically they're presenting it like they're a hard science. Psychology is to say, hey, look, we're a soft science. Okay, this is a soft science. We can tell you what we've seen, but we cannot tell you these things can never change. We can't
Yeah,
say,
but they won't say pseudoscience.
well, yeah, so basically, my attitude is that I think if we were to look at it more from the neurology, I think we would stop focusing so much on the behaviors, because the behaviors are really just incidental. Believe me, if a narcissist can somehow stop certain behaviors and they still have the NPD brain, they're going to have other issues, And so, like, I think we should really focus more on just the thing of having a, how would you say, having a developmental problem in processing emotional information, and how that causes dysregulations in life. Once you look at it that way, first of all, you see these people are impaired. That's very important. You see they're impaired, and even if they can be, let's say, harmful to people, I think we should be real careful with the word abuse. Okay, I think people can be harmful to each other, because I guarantee you, if you don't have a mature brain, you could cause harm. There's no doubt.
Mhm.
I don't know if I want to use the word abuse, because when you say abuse, that kind of presumes somebody has more power. And I don't think we want to present people that have impairments in the brain like they're powerful. I think these are people that have,
No, but
they're not really,
at one point, they were powerless against someone who was powerful.
yeah, but basically, like, they may be powerful in terms of muscles or in terms of,
No,
physical strength
just
or
the over
whatever.
domineering effect of someone being an adult.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah, no, I understand that, but I think, like, they don't have enough. When someone has a reduced capacity to process things in the brain, I just think it's better not to give them too much status, like they're coming from such a high place to, like, abuse people. I think it's more like they can just be dangerous, or they can be harmful. Leave it like that. And
Yeah.
I think that that way you take some of that attitude out of it, where you're like starting to, like, hate them for being like these, I don't know, like, Wow.
But I described it to Jacob is people they I don't know if this is the word they put some I can't think of the word, they put some type of mythology on it, some type of like not even a religious aspect, but just like something like, oh, like this is like just okay, a narcissist is just one person. Now, and I said this in my other interview with Tess, but let's just say you take the technical symptom criteria. All right, you need 5 out of 9. 2 people with NPD can have NPD, share one symptom criteria, right? We said this. I said it in the other one. I know you know. All different combinations of personalities that can come out, a negative symptom criteria that can come out from those. I can't do the math. I should do it. I should do the math and then come up with it. I can't. It's thousands of possibilities and chances of just negative symptom criteria, let alone what
Right.
what that person, even with NPD, with that person, even if you say he's an amalgam of different an amalgam or beings of other people, I'm sure that one person likes to write poetry or likes to draw or likes this type of music or has this as a hobby or works this type of job because they actually like doing it or whatever, or has this type of taste in a person. All the gray area inside it, it's not looked at enough.
Yeah.
Are yes, so some people with NPD, whether you want to say covert narcissist, grandiose narcissist, which or vulnerable or malignant, or they have a comorbid condition with ASPD, BPD, whatever the case may be, and you want to say how horrible and evil this person is. I understand that, but I want people to view things more like me.
Okay.
There's so many many millions of factors that came into play, and none of it is an excuse for bad treatment. But stop, because then I see these people when it is black and white thinking, and in turn, the victim or whoever gets black and white thinking, thinking they're all bad, and you got to look at yourself and that person from multiple, but then some people also. Some people don't care to even go that far. And they find their healing on their own just by whatever. Me, I like to know before I even was involved with anyone who was cluster B related, I like to know what made people tick. So I went in that direction.
Yeah. Well, I think you might have yourself, you might have you might have like a unique interest in that's not normal. You know what I mean? Like maybe I'm sorry, I'm just gonna say maybe you're a little above average or a little above average in terms of like that you're really curious about knowing how people tick, like maybe average people are not quite like that. You know what I mean? Like,
I was told by my well, I can't say my friend's girlfriend, who is also pretty she's not a mental health worker or whatever, but both of her parents are, so she's very intertwined with mental health and all this other stuff and disorders. And she was like, one day she was like, you might be a little obsessive, David. And I was like, I mean, listen, I just no matter how much I go, there's just more layers and layers and layers, and to me it fascinates me. And the reason why it fascinates me so much is because it's empathy and sympathy that we're talking about, and their deficits or complete lack thereof of those two things. And there's just something about that blows my mind.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating.
Like I said, when I was younger, and you called me on the wrong day, I wouldn't have much empathy for you. No sympathy whatsoever. I used to be, whatever, but it fascinates me now, knowing the experiences that I've been through, and I'm past the emotions and the all that. Now I'm just at a point where it's like, and now it's not even just for cluster B, it's for all different people. The interview I did with my friend Vanessa, who has OCD, was fascinating to find out the intrusive thoughts that lead to obsessions, and then those who do compulsive actions to alleviate those thoughts, even though you're just actually perpetuating a negative cycle, instead of you should find a different outlet from those compulsions. But
well, no, like my response to that is that if psychology could give us a better understanding, like a better, not just identifying people. It's easy to identify people. What about understanding people? That's different. If I read the DSM criteria, I'm just identifying somebody. I'm not understanding anything. It's just identification. If we if psychology could get people more to understand, okay, there's something that's different that will happen. Okay, it's not going to keep people from being NPD. The NPDs will still be NPDs, but if we understand them better, we'll be able to say, okay, it's kind of like when I see someone with dementia. If someone has dementia, they're going to be cussing people out. They're going to be acting like jerks, but that's because they have dementia. You understand that. It doesn't mean that it's safe to be around them. Sometimes people with dementia could take a fork and stick it in your back, you know? But like what I'm saying is that when you understand that, you're going to have a better attitude. You know what I mean? And it's going to be like, say, a
Better outlook
healthier attitude,
too, and a better
healthier
outlook.
attitude where, you know, nobody is benefiting from making a villain out of anybody. You know, like we don't benefit from that. There's no benefit. You can, without making someone a villain, I could say, hey, look, you know, I notice this guy seems kind of narcissistic, you know, and I myself, I don't feel like I have, let's say, the power or the awareness or the defenses that I can be real close to him. I mean, full respect. I just, you know, I have that understanding, but there's no offense, you know, no, I'm not putting him down. I'm just saying, like, I know myself. Or like, say, somebody might be a little tougher and say, yeah, I can handle my narcissistic friend because I have the maturity to do it. And it's like, you know, whatever. But like, and yeah, he may say some things that kind of put me down, but I don't take it too seriously because I understand his condition. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like a better headspace. And then for those that can't handle it because it's just too annoying, you just admit it. But it's not like, oh, he's this terrible person. It's just like, you know, that guy's kind of narcissistic. I just find I can't handle it. But you know, hey, everybody teach his own, and it's just like a more peaceful attitude, you know,
Okay.
where we can fully identify the disorder, but we just don't have to add all that hatred and all that, you know, BS, you know.
No. I hear everything you're saying, and everything you just said made perfect sense. I wanna. I just had it just popped in my thought. I have to ask this. People are going to be watching this, and they're going to be like, "This guy doesn't seem like a narcissist.
Mm-hmm.
This guy doesn't seem like he hasn't like well, the from the stigmatic view of it, you know."
Mm-hmm.
But what would you have to say to those people?
I would say, well, you should see
I
videotape.
guarantee you, at this point, there's someone that's going to be like, like this guy just seems like a
Yeah,
normal
yeah.
guy. He's probably faking it.
No, I would say, like, man, if only you could see like a videotape of what I acted like in law school, that would tell you in 2 seconds. And I would be embarrassed by that. I'll be honest. I would be real embarrassed, you know.
I feel
But
you.
yeah, there were a lot of times when I did things that you know,
Oh,
well,
this is a
hey,
question. This is a question. This is a question. You're going right into it. Do you live with any regrets?
okay, well, can I first go back to what you were saying about the mask and the how, because I don't think we ever got to the mask. Do you
Yeah,
mind?
roller
Do
coaster. No,
you mind
definitely,
if we go
definitely,
back to
definitely,
that?
definitely. I'm
Okay,
probably gonna cut
because
this up into two parts anyway. So continue.
anyway, it's so funny because and it's my fault. It's my fault because I wanted to give a shout out to the nameless narcissist and to Spirit Narc. Remember, because and the reason why I was putting a shout out to
Actually, I do
them,
remember that we got lost off track. It was probably me,
that's where
my
that was
ADHD.
that's where we took the left turn, you know.
Yeah.
But the reason why I wanted to mention them is because they're very insightful. They have a lot of self-awareness, you know, and they always talk about what they call the false self. I think they use the phrase the
The
false
false self
self. Is
and
that
true
right?
self. Yes.
Okay. So that's kind of interesting because then we talk about, like, say, the mask, you know, and I would say that I try to see NPD as an exaggeration of things you see in normal people. Okay. It's like things that you can find in any normal person, they're just more exaggerated in the NPD, right? So like I would challenge anybody that in the world that we live in, okay, there's always going to be a separation between the real person and the public persona that a person has. You know, everybody has that. We all have that. You know,
Hmm.
like, say, the best place that I can see that, if you ever like watch like reality TV from like Hollywood and LA, or like, you know, there's certain cities
Those
where
old
you see,
MTV shows from
well,
LA.
I would say like anything where you see like I don't know, like I was watching like a documentary on Paris Hilton, you know, or something like that. And I just noticed when I see people from Hollywood, they seem like they're really into their, how would you say, their persona, you know what I mean? Like the way their fashion, and they're so
See, see,
perfect,
see,
and they're,
see.
and the one thing I think the United States is like a perfect country to talk about, you know, the persona. You know what I mean? The persona is not the person. You know what I'm saying? Like the persona is like the projection. It's like the image we give out, you know? So like I think the United States is a perfect country because in the United States we have the suburbs, you know, and tell me that the suburbs are not a fantasy. You know what I mean? It's a fantasy. I mean, think about what the suburbs are.
Yeah,
It's like we can have,
describe that more in detail.
okay, like say when I go into a suburb, I see it, you know, everybody's got their yard nice and tidy. They got their houses nice and orderly. They have these
Presentation.
beautiful, beautiful cars, you know, and everybody's a little bit self-conscious. You know, I don't want to be the ugliest person in my neighborhood. So I make sure when I walk out to my car, I'm nice and even if I'm just going to go out, you know, even if I'm going to go exercising, I got a nice, like, you know, I got my nice, like, what do you call it? Like my yoga pants and great, nice shoes. And, you know,
Yeah, they would
even
hate
how
me. They would hate me. I walk outside playing a bunch of gangster rap with a joint in my mouth. Let me stop. Keep going, keep going, keep going.
no,
But I see what you're
but I
saying
think
though. Upholding the presentation.
but we understand like the suburban lifestyle, right? I mean, we
Yeah,
understand the suburbs, you know,
I technically live in the suburbs, so yeah.
you know, like say the housewives, you know, kind of even when they say the housewives of LA or the housewives of whatever, you know, it's like it's just persona is a real thing, you know. It's not just how we look, it's also the way we keep our house, the car we drive, the clothes we wear,
And these
you
are
know.
conscious
So
decisions, and you're explaining this to bring it back to the mask, and but these are
well,
conscious decisions that people make. So what would the difference be with the?
well, not I'm not even sure it's really conscious. I think it's just human behavior. You know, I think it's human behavior that humans want to have a persona. You know what I mean? Like whoever you are for real, you also want to have your image. You know what I mean? It's just that's human. That's just human. We all want to have our image, you know.
Yeah,
And I just think that, you know, like say the peacock has its feathers or whatever, you know, the humans got its feathers. We got our feathers, you know, and I think like you could take the feathers away from the indigenous people, but we all still have our feathers. You know what I mean? We got to have our feathers. We got to have our style. We got to have our look, you know, and we also have to project. Like say, if you have like say a career, you know, you project a certain professional attitude, you project a personality, because that's part of how you. It's what humans do. So like, I'm never going to take that away from people. That's part of the human. That's what we are. We're not. We are what we are.
yeah,
I
yeah,
think sometimes we want to imagine ourselves like we're so pure and we're so authentic. Humans are not authentic. We're all two-faced. We all have the real stuff on the inside and what we project on the outside. The
exactly,
public.
exactly, exactly. I have now. My definition of a mask would be this one right here. No, I'm just playing. But no, no. If like, an outward mask like that, I mean, but the thing is, though, is I'm very cool with lots of my coworkers, at least at one of my jobs. So I'm pretty much myself, you
No,
know.
no, I understand, and I
But,
mean, there's variation in that. There's
but
a
I
lot of
also
variation.
I've never been like in a professional corporate environment where I need to be
Of
more,
course.
you
No,
know.
no, and I will
But,
say this: there are some
but I
people
hold
I
on,
think.
I am different when I'm by myself than when I'm with a family, friend, coworkers, acquaintances. It does go like in a little range like that, but
And
it's
that's
not so much a
perfectly human.
mask. You know,
No, I
I'm not
understand that.
consciously, purposely doing that. But yeah, keep
No,
going.
I understand, but I think we have to start with that because I think we always have to accept that NPD is a condition. Okay, it's a real condition, but we always have to relate it to regular human behavior because it is just exaggerations in regular human behavior. Okay, so it's very normal for people to have like say a public persona, and yes, in the population some people fall more into the persona and they're more exaggerated in the persona than others. Okay, even in
Yes.
some of the cities I live, you go to some neighborhoods, it's like, oh, that neighborhood's so plastic,
Oh,
that
and
neighborhood's
you're in Colombia, or Ecuador. You're in Ecuador right now.
yeah.
Colombia. You're
but
in
it,
my homeland.
but even in, like say like in the United States, like I used to live, let's say in New Mexico, let's say, okay, so I remember like some neighborhoods like, oh, this is a hippie neighborhood, oh no, this is more of a materialistic neighborhood, you know. So like even just by neighborhoods you can see that some people are more into the image, more into the more makeup, you know, more fake, whatever you want to say, more plastic surgery, you know what
Yeah.
I'm saying. But just to understand that in humans there's a like a range of like you know, call it image, focus on the image, you know what I mean, like having an image. And some people have so much of an image you almost wonder where's the real person on the inside, you know, even people that are not diagnosed, you know, or don't have a disorder, you know. So basically what I'm thinking is that Probably a narcissist, someone who has, like, say, narcissism, like diagnosable narcissism, probably, given the immaturities they have in processing information and whatever, when they try to have a behavior that's in that area, probably mentally there's a dysregulation going on that makes it show up way more exaggerated. Okay. And also, here's the thing, it's not just it shows up in the behavior, but also there's another behavior, which is how we actually think on the inside. And I'm gonna say, here's one symptom that I still have from NPD, that I still have this symptom, that when I watch, like, say, reality TV from, like, say, Los Angeles, or like stuff like kind of Paris Hilton kind of stuff or whatever,
Yeah.
when I watch that, I can feel myself shifting. I feel myself shifting into the call it the glam suburbs, with everybody with makeup and
The
plastic
person you're
surgery.
watching, it's like you're trying to emulate that person in a way.
Not emulate. No, it's not.
No?
It's not an emulation. In my case, it's more like I'm in that world. It's like I'm switching the worlds. I'm going from my
Mm.
world to their world, and suddenly I feel like I'm in the world of plastic Los Angeles, like Cadillacs, and
Oh, that's that can almost be compartmentalizing, but like
I'm
compartmentalizing
shifting.
your actual state of mind, which is something I actually talked to my mom about this.
Yeah,
She compartmentalizes things
yeah,
consciously.
yeah.
You know, I
Right.
know people with NPD do it too. My mom is nowhere near. She's the most empathetic, sympathetic person.
I understand. I understand.
But she does it too, and it blew my mind because that means that this is just a compartmentalization is something that doesn't have to do with an empathy at all. It's just it's and I guess I do it to a certain extent. You know, I could have relations with a woman and physically, and I have no emotion attached, and it's kind of compartmentalized different in my brain like that.
Mhm.
It's not so much personal, pers- purposely done. It just kind of happens like that.
Yeah,
But
it's a switch.
yeah, yeah, but it is like a thing, and that people, my mom can compartmentalize things. She told me, okay, David, me, Wavid, Wavy, whatever, is going through something. He's doing this. He's acting up again or whatever. Go, I'm gonna
Mhm.
bring this box over here, and I'm gonna open up this box over here instead mentally. And like, do you experience anything like that? That's a question I have not been able to ask anybody about how
Okay.
you compartmentalize people and just things in your life.
Okay, now my response to that, it's going to tie into the mask. Okay, so
Okay.
basically, because it's so important to the mask is a product of our fantasy reality, like how we experience our fantasies. Okay, so like, here's the thing. I noticed that I still have the symptom, and I consider this an NPD symptom, that when I have trouble being in two worlds at the same time. I have trouble being in two worlds at the same time. Okay. So, like, say, for me,
Okay.
every world is a world. Like, say, the neighborhood you live in is a world. That's a world, the neighborhood you live in. Okay. Let's say there's another neighborhood in New York, a totally different world. It's a different world, like Wall Street, like that's a different world. That's
Yeah.
you're on a different planet on some sense.
Yeah, I live in a bad neighborhood. I live in a bad city, so I live right outside the Bronx. I'm like 10 minutes from the Bronx. So like where I live at compared to Wall Street,
It's a different world.
total polarization.
Exactly. And, like, say, when I lived in, like, say, New Mexico, or when I lived in Miami, for example, like, each neighborhood was like a totally different world, like different world. And I found that in some cases, not all the time, but in some worlds that are very, for me, very fantasy worlds, like, say, I would say parts of Hollywood are like fantasy worlds, and they just are just the way people are. They're just people that have so much plastic surgery, so much makeup, that they're just not people. They're like something else. And in those worlds, sometimes, like, when I catch that disease, like when it's like contagious on me, and I catch that world, I
Mhm.
almost feel like I'm no longer in my own world. You see, like, I switch out. You see what I
Would
mean?
that be with wearing
It's
a
like a
mask,
switch. It's like a
and
switch.
compartmentalization or something completely different?
Well, I think this is just a way of helping to understand what the mask is really happening. What's really happening when someone has that
It
mask.
is building up a fantasy for your
When
own internally. You're
I'm
building up a
thinking
fantasy.
that, like, for example, like the world that I like to be in is the world of taking walks, the world of being in the woods. I love forest. To me, the forest is like something we should all get more in our lives, because I think the forest is something that does good stuff to our soul. You know what I mean? because I think the forest does things to us that we could never get anywhere else,
That
you
was
know?
gonna be one question I was gonna ask you is what do you love that has nothing to do with yourself? That's like
Yeah,
a hobby
yeah.
or something of yours to
Well, because I think like the forest, I think forest and like pure nature, like just pure wilderness, you know, I think that has stuff in it that does magic into you, because that's like a world that's good for people. You know what I mean? Like it's just good. Like being barefoot is good in some situations because it's like it's another world, you know.
in the
And so when
sand,
I'm
the mud next to a creek. Yeah,
it's just different. It's like the quietness is different and it's a different place. But when you switch from that to like say Hollywood, you know, you're a switch. I mean, that's switching out, you know. And so like here's what I have to say about that. That I come back to that thing of the pixelation we're talking about, like the processing. Because when you get fascinated in a world, because you're fascinated by the world, it's like, wow, what a world. That's like because it's a fantasy world. You see, when the suburbs, that's a fantasy, but it's a fantasy that people are living out. It's like
fantastical thinking.
it's 24-hour theater because every house is a stage, you know, every person is a player, you know, every person is an actor.
That
It's
was
on a
another question. Damn, you keep bringing up. Do you feel like you're the star
yeah.
of your own movie?
But anyway, so like what I'm saying is that the when we say go into different worlds, they're fantasy worlds, you see. So like if you go to Las Vegas, you see these hot girls, you see all this cool stuff, and this is a fantasy world. It's like it's a real world, but it's fantasy, you know what I'm saying? And so I think in like when you have that problem with processing emotional information like excitement, you know, things that make you really like fascinated, you know, like fantasy and stuff, if you don't have that processing, like mature adult processing, you're not going to be able to hold two worlds together at the same time. You see what I'm saying? And so
Yeah,
you switch and you switch and you switch. And when you switch like that, you can't have a stable underlying reality. You know what I mean? Like the under reality that's supposed to be your solid internal self, you're not going to have that solid because it's switching too much. And
does that
so
lead to object permanency, or object constancy?
I don't
They're two
know.
different things, and people with ADHD suffer from this a lot, and I can relate to it a lot actually.
Okay.
But do you think it sounds like you're almost about to get into that because of the childhood state of mind that you grew up, or that someone with NPD might grow up in, and not be able? Yeah, yeah,
Like you lack the processing ability in your brain to be able to manage being simultaneously in two different worlds, okay, so that when you go into a fantasy place it takes you 100%. You see what
okay,
I mean? It takes you 100% because you 100% go in that world and it's almost like you forgot the other worlds you were in. You see what I mean? Because you can't process and you can't hold multiple things simultaneous. You don't have enough processing ability because you didn't develop it. You see, and especially because these things are very emotional for us because it's so exciting to have a fantasy. It's so exciting to be in these beautiful fantasies. You know what I mean? So it kind of takes you and it kind of captures you. You see what I'm saying? It
yeah,
captures you.
permanently.
So yeah, and so like basically I still have that symptom. Like I have to shut off Netflix because when I'm watching some like reality TV or something, if it's too Hollywood for me, it takes me away. And I have to shut it off and I have to go back to my place. You know what I mean? Because I can't handle it. I can't control it. You know,
Do
it
you experience
it
the
takes me.
the need for admiration or attention or validation
Well, I think
to
they all
fuel that fantasy, or
well
is that something that you've grown out of over age?
well it can come, but I think I see it like this. I see all that stuff just comes with the package. You see what I'm saying? It just comes with the package. I think we have to look at everything as a package. Okay. So like when you get taken in certain worlds, okay, it's already understood in those worlds, the stuff about the attention, the stuff about the, you know, the admiration that comes with the package. If you really analyze, let's say, go to the most plastic, materialistic neighborhoods that you can find, those worlds already have it programmed in the package, the stuff about being admired and about being attention and all that. It comes in the package.
Mm.
It's all a package. You see what I mean? So we don't, the thing is that when a healthy person lives in one of these glam neighborhoods, okay, they are not so taken. They may have all the makeup, they may even have the lipo, they may have the Botox, but they're not so 100% taken by it. You see what I'm saying? They still have something in them that can handle the rest of the world. Whereas I think some people, they get so taken that it's almost like a possession. You see what I'm saying? It's like a possession, and it just like you are no longer a person. You are now just the stereotype of that world.
Oh,
You see what I mean?
can I ask a question? You said you
Yeah.
watched an interview with Tess, and so this is a question I'm also going to be asking, but I want your perspective on this. I hear obviously, okay, so people with NPD or cluster B personality disorders, they hate to be viewed as weak, and I keep hearing from anyone that I've watched or research literature that I've read that there was a certain point in time when a person with NPD said, "Yeah, no, I don't want to be like this anymore. I don't want to be weak. I don't want to be viewed
Okay.
as whatever." And then they got rid of that past self for them. But from the wild point to me is that the weird, crazy, wild point to me is that they remember that exact point
Of
when
course.
they got rid of themselves and like they
Yeah.
gave themselves up to a higher being in a way and became that being.
It's
Or
just like what I'm saying. She got taken. Let's say she's trying to say, I think she's trying to say that she got
well, no, she
taken
didn't
by.
say that, but I explained that to her, and she said
Yeah,
something
yeah.
different. But do you remember
Well,
the point where you said, I don't want to be this person anymore. I want
okay.
to be
I'll
this."
be honest with you. Like I think I have NPD in the sense that I can be taken. Okay. That's how my NPD comes out, that I can be taken by certain fantasies. But in my lifetime, I have been taken by fantasies. Okay. But I never got permanently taken by them. You see what I mean? I was always able to kind of wiggle out, you know.
Okay, okay,
but
cool.
but I can be taken temporarily. You see what I mean? It
Yeah,
can take me over. So I think what I understood Tess was trying to say, how I understood it, and she can forgive me if I'm getting it a little bit wrong, is that she got attracted to, through her own imagination and through maybe some pop culture references, she got maybe attracted to the idea of a fantasy that was better than her reality. And she sort of got taken into that fantasy. It sort of took her over, but she didn't have the processing she didn't, let's say, have the processing faculties of the mind to sort of hold those two worlds together simultaneous. It's sort of like she had to go all the way into
yeah,
it had to
that's
be a
what I hear is that most people
full
they go all the
switch,
way.
full switch. Yeah,
Yeah.
because
So
it
you
takes.
didn't suffer through that. You were able
Well,
to.
no. I'm telling you that it can happen to me, but I've always been able to. I get fully taken, but then I'm able to
Right.
kind of wiggle out at some point. You know
Okay.
what I mean? So when you talk about, for example, like, do you want to be seen as weak? I think it depends on what fantasy you've been taken by. Okay. So like if I'm taken by a fantasy where you can't be weak, then that'll show up, you know what I mean? Because
I
that's the
like
fantasy that I
I
took.
like that. I like that. Depending on
The
the fantasy.
fantasy you took. Yeah.
I like that a lot. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Because I
Like
mean,
for example, like I'm gonna tell you something. I was once taken by another fantasy, which was I love this I don't know if you can remember. Well, actually, I don't know if you'll remember.
I was
Like,
born in '91, so what any references in the
okay,
'90s to late, I'll remember possibly, but
okay. Well, I was taken by the fantasy of, like, say, a certain detective show from the 1970s that was called the Rockford Files.
I
Okay,
was
it
gonna
was.
say the Hutch.
Well, okay, but it was like the same period. But
Yeah.
this was about a detective, a private detective that was very, like, humble. He was very humble. He was like, he lived in a trailer park and he was just a nice guy, and he was just
Kind
kind
of like
of
Mel Gibson and Lethal Weapon.
but real down home, like down home guy, like just lived in a trailer, just was very kind of like podunk, whatever. But here's the thing: when I got taken by the fantasy of, like, being kind of like in that world, that at that point, even some of my fantasy characteristics might seem kind of humble, you know what I mean? But it's still being taken by fantasy. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, so what's happening is I'm not really myself, because when you take a full 100% fantasy, that is not a real person that you become. You see what I mean? That's not real. And so that's whatever I was projecting at that point, that wasn't really me, you see, and it was just 100% fantasy. And so it's not real. And that's, even if it's humble, it's not right. You know what I mean? That's not right for a person to be like that, 100%.
Hold on. Okay, so we've been going, I think, for about like an hour and a half now.
Okay.
I want to ask, well, 4 questions. They're questions I ask everybody. Actually, I hope I didn't ask. No, I didn't. I, So they're just four questions. The last two are the most important, I guess, for the
Okay.
viewers. But uh, how do you view people, and how do you view the world?
Okay. Well, I'll be honest, like I have really tried to get beyond living as an NPD. Okay. Like I still can. I can get sucked into it. Like if you put me in the wrong situation and the wrong um if I was under a certain amount of stress, certain amount of insecurity, and if you fed me the right fantasies, I could get real messed up. Okay. And so so like I could be in a bad place. Okay. But if I'm not in a bad place, I will say that for me, I think in terms of policy. Okay. I think in terms of policy, like what's a good policy? And I just find that it, to me, my experience in life, it doesn't seem like a good policy to look at people with any idea of them being good or bad. Okay. I just look at people, frankly, like we're just animals, like I said something to you, I said the other day, I said we're like fancy orangutans, like
No,
orangutan.
no, I agree with that. I agree with that. We're just a bunch of chimpanzees with a shirt on, trying to figure out what the hell is we're doing in life. Like,
Yeah. I mean, we're
I
like
agree
we're
with
like
that a lot,
primates.
man. I'm not gonna hold you. I agree with that a lot.
Yeah, so like and like every human being has fantasy. Every human being has BS. Like BS. Like don't even call it a lie. It's just BS. People have BS, people have lies, people have BS. They have people have contradictions, people have like not making sense, irrational. And then sometimes we're real rational, but even to the point where it's like absurd, even being so rational that it becomes a joke, like we're just so full of we're just crazy, we're just crazy. And at the same time we're like building like fighter airplanes and nuclear power plants, but we're still crazy. I mean, we're just crazy, we're arrogant, we're overpopulating the earth,
So do
and
you
so
view
like,
people as separate individuals other than yourself?
oh yeah, no, I'm not, I don't think at this point I'm under like say the, I don't think I'm really symptomatic terribly right now. I could be. Like I have a cluster B brain, okay? But I don't think I'm in that situation where I'm not fully understanding the reality of other people. Like that's, at this point I'm not having that problem.
Good, good,
Yeah.
good, good. Okay,
But it could come back. Like I think it's a good policy for people with personality disorders, if you get into any kind of remission, to understand that it's like being a drug addict, that you could go back to it. It's kind of like your drug. And so
I
I
like
think you
that.
got to be careful. Just understand that you could go back. But no, like I see people, but I do not, I have not gotten to the point where I think people are so great. I think people are just people. And when we say people, I think just kind of like primates with a lot of fancy stuff.
Okay,
Um,
all right. So how do you think, or do you care? You said you're not that symptomatic anymore, but how do you think people view you, or do you even care? And if you
I
do
think,
care, how much?
okay, like I do think that when people get to know me for a while, they can tell there's something kind of different about me, and probably not 100%. Like I think most people who get to know me for a while, they probably know there's some issues with me. They probably just could sense it, even if they can't put a word on it. Okay. And I do think probably if you get to know me like over time, I probably do have some slight arrogance characteristics, and probably some slight kind of like, I would say kind of sarcastic, or not, maybe not so sarcastic, maybe more like cynical, like, so I think people probably do see a little bit of a narcissistic, a little vibe, probably, but probably not terrible, but they definitely could see that I've got issues. Something in my brain is not
So do you
100%.
care how other people view you?
Of
Honestly.
course I do. No, I do
Yep.
care about how people see me, but not to the point where I'm like affected. Like, how would you say? I care, but I'm not going to crumble over it, because I've also kind of accepted that it's like a drug addict. I'm now to the point where I have, at least at this point, I've accepted that, I'm not running away from my issues. Like I know I've got issues. So
Okay. Okay. Um. Okay. So my last two questions is kind of just the same thing I just said, but it's kind of the one question in two almost. Um. What advice would you give to someone, especially because you're just a little bit of an older person?
mhm.
Um, what advice would you give to someone who is suffering from NPD right now? on, and Tessa corrected me on this, on how to become healthier, not better, not, but healthier, and dissolving some of that inner turmoil. If you have any
Okay.
tips, tricks, hints, whatever.
Okay, I'll tell you, here's what I'm going to say. Okay. I would say don't focus so much on the symptoms. Don't focus so much on, oh my God, I'm being grandiose. Oh my God, I'm being judgmental. Oh my God, I'm being arrogant. No, no. Don't focus so much on that because you get lost in that. I would say get to a point where you can maybe start to see how when you get attracted to like some, I call it a fantasy world, you know, whatever, how it takes you so much, how the fantasy takes you so much. Okay. And then try to see if it's possible to understand that maybe that's coming because you're not able to hold different worlds together at the same time. And maybe just ask yourself if maybe at some point, maybe early in life, didn't develop the ability to hold different exciting things together at the same time to get pulled so 100% by things. And then to just admit that it's an issue and to see if you're willing to practice maybe shifting worlds and maybe trying to hold different worlds. And if you can't do that, maybe let worlds go, like try to get yourself out of some of those worlds just as an exercise and see if you can build yourself to holding different worlds that are maybe not so exciting, because the less exciting the worlds are, the less they're going to grip you 100%. So I would say maybe try as an experiment getting into worlds that are not so exciting, but so you can actually develop a real, like real skills, you know? And then the second thing I would say to anybody is if you're willing to do that, I would say it's so important to develop a real skill, any skill. It doesn't matter. You could just be a cashier. You could just be working in a call center, but just a real skill and actually get good at it. Okay. Because at that point, you're developing a real self. You're developing a real person out of yourself.
Yes, yes, yes. A real sense of point of pride that you can actually.
Because you know it's real. It's not
Yes,
fake.
yes.
It's one thing about you that's not fake. Okay.
Yes.
And then and if you can do that, then maybe you can start experimenting with fantasies, because we all humans should have fantasies. Okay. But maybe as you start to develop more realness in your life, then you can actually handle fantasy and then it's not so pathological, maybe. But you have to go in steps and you got to start by getting out of maybe the most extreme fantasies to start building some realness.
I also hear that DBC therapy, CBC therapy, and I just learned this last week, but EDMR therapy, which is a trauma therapy,
Yeah.
so works well.
I think maybe the best therapy for people with personality disorders is what I would call step by step therapy, like little baby step, baby step, baby step. Like some people say, hey, I went to the gym, you know, for like 6 months and now I'm benching like 300 pounds and I'm blah, blah, blah. There's another way to approach getting better in life, which is very, very small steps, like starting off real easy. Like, say, if you're a narcissist, I would say the best medicine would be to get a very easy job, because you start something is easy. Okay. Like, say, exactly what
but
an,
they
an
feel like they're
NP,
too good for it.
well, no, but you have to be willing to at least experiment, even against your taste, because that's the first step, you know, doing experiments that go against your flavors, you
So
know,
we're
because
talking
that's
about someone who's able to make that first step past
if
their.
you're willing to try it, you
Mhm.
know, like, hey, like Paris Hilton could do that one reality TV where she was getting these weird crazy jobs around the country, like, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
Think of it as like experiment. But like say if you can start with a real easy job, something you will have no trouble with, okay, and then slowly build it up to more, a little harder, but very slowly. Because the thing you have to be careful with NPD is making big jumps, because when you make big jumps, you run the risk of getting a little fake.
Yeah, it's like, okay, I just started coding. Now I'm gonna make the next AI robot, it's like, whoa, okay, hold on. That
Smaller
already.
steps, because the bigger the step, the more likely you're stepping into fantasy land. You see what I'm saying? So it's like that's when it's not so real anymore.
And for
So you
someone
want to
who has
stay
fantastical thinking, they have to take it a step
super
slower.
real. And then at the same time, don't make a taboo about fantasy. Fantasy is totally human, but just try to have stuff in your life that's totally real so that your fantasy is not taking you 100%. You see?
Okay.
A human without fantasy is not a human. To be human, you got to have fantasy. But with the NPD, you got to develop more of the real stuff so it doesn't take you 100%.
Okay. Okay. I like that. I hope there's some 18-year-old person who might have it or think they might have it or is relating the shoes fitting a little too well for them, and that they could
Mhm.
try to get some advice out of this for their future, just like how you said how Tess and Jacob are very knowledgeable for their age. I
Mhm.
agree as well. I'm like 10 years older than both of them.
That's
But
right.
all right, so my last question.
Okay, but can I just say one more thing? I just want to
Yes,
say
yes,
one
yes,
thing.
yes, yes,
Okay,
yes.
the one more thing I want to say about it is that we have to be realistic too. Okay, let's be realistic. Let's say in the world of, say, like people who have autism, we know in the spectrum of autism, there's some people that have more profound autism than other people, right?
Exactly.
And in my experience, I've found that some people, unfortunately, their NPD is more profound than other people's. Okay. That's just something I've noticed. Okay. And I have noticed even in my own family, there's some people that have NPD symptoms that are more profound than mine in some areas. Okay. Like, say, even I'm going to say someone very close to me that I'm not going to say who it is, but
Yeah, yeah.
someone very close to me, he is 100% his whole lifetime stuck in one fantasy, never gotten out of it. Okay. Like, that's so much time, and it's so set up, and it's so permanent that I don't think he would even understand this conversation that we've had. Okay. He wouldn't understand it because he's so in it, you see? And so there are some, we have to be patient. We have to understand that with some people, they're going to be so profoundly locked in that the conversation we're having wouldn't even make sense to them. Wouldn't even make sense. It would be too foreign for them. Okay.
You know,
So
I get it.
one of the things, if we're going to get better, as I don't think we should focus so much on how are these NPD people going to get better. That's not a
No, no, that's why I
meaningful.
said healthier, and to solve the inner turmoil, so they could feel better
Well,
for themselves, let alone the people around them, just for
okay,
themselves.
but there are some NPDs that are not going to get better. Okay, because that's the reality. Okay,
Yeah,
so I think,
that's the reality, and that's the facts we have to face.
but what we can ask a different question is, how can the world get better so that we can handle those people better in a better way? Okay,
Oh
so like,
man,
so
that's a big task, my guy.
well, no, but I mean, look, I mean, where I can't do it, someone's going to help me out. Where they can't do it, I'm going to help them out. You see what I mean? It's kind of like, that's the sharing attitude. So like the way I look at it is that for those NPDs that have a little wiggle room in them, exploit the wiggle room the best you can, as much as you can. Okay. For the NPDs that don't have the wiggle room, and maybe the ASPDs and the other crazy
Yes,
people that don't have the wiggle room, we as a people should improve ourselves as a people to accommodate. When I say accommodate, I don't mean in an unhealthy way. I mean to sort of hold them in our humanity in a healthier way by understanding, just
that's what I
understanding.
do. That's literally what I do. I
Yeah,
say it's okay for this dude who has ASPD to steal your bank card, rob all the bank money out of your bank, and then make a getaway and never see you again. I'm not saying, oh, forgive that person.
yeah,
Understand
yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
childhood, or the person with NPD who gaslit you and made your existence feel unreal. I'm not saying, but
Yep.
just the general over what wisdom and
Yeah,
understanding
yeah,
is what
yeah.
is was most necessary.
If
In my
somebody like if somebody asked me, like, well, what can I do then for this totally profound narcissist that's so profound they're never going to get better?
You're leading
I'm
to the
like,
next question.
I would tell that person, I would say, first, just have understanding and improve your understanding. And then I'm not going to say anything more to do, because when you have understanding, the understanding will take the steps. Okay.
So
And different people have different understanding, and the more understanding is in the world, you don't have to think about the steps, because understanding will give the steps,
give you the
but
inner peace.
understanding is a place to go, because it'll make things better.
So my last
Okay.
question is the flip side. What advice would you give to somebody who is either a brother, a sister, a
Okay.
cousin, a best friend, or even mother, father, or even more importantly, I guess more
Okay.
importantly, their boyfriend, girlfriend,
Okay.
brother, a
Right.
husband, wife has some, and of course they might not know that they have NPD because
Okay.
you can't just self-diagnose and everything.
Eh,
But if the shoe fits a little too well, what
yeah,
advice would
yeah,
you
yeah.
give that
Okay.
person?
I would say this. I would say the one thing in life that you will always pay the price for is being foolish. Okay. So, like, if we are even accidentally foolish, we're going to pay the price. Okay. So from there, okay, we have to be not naive about anything. Okay. Naive is not going to help anything. Okay. So we got to try not to be naive. Okay. Because that's not going to help. Okay. And here's the thing, regardless of the disorder, okay, here's something that is wise. I think it's wise. Okay. This is wise. You know this, we know this from growing up, we know this from sports. Okay. There's a reason why boxers have weight categories. Okay. Weight class, strength categories. First thing you need to do when you're going to interact with somebody who might be dangerous or could cause harm. Okay. You have to know your weight class and you have to know your strength class. Okay. You got to know if you can handle what you can handle. If you have any doubt about what you can handle, you're just not in the right weight category and you're not the person to be having direct dealings. Okay. But trust me, for every weight category, there's people that belong in that weight category and they can take it because they can give it back, So like if say if I weigh 220 pounds and I'm fairly strong, I can be around other 220-pound people who are also kind of strong. If I get around an NFL player who's like 320 pounds and much stronger, okay, I'm not in that class. Okay. But if I'm around someone who's my weight category, 220 pounds, certain strength, I can take the hits, I can take it, and it's not going to be a big deal.
I want just so the people watching can get a better understanding of what you're trying to say. I think I understand what you're trying to say. Obviously, you're not talking about physical pounds, how much you weigh.
Psychological.
Talking about the psychological. Yes, like this person has 230 pounds of mental stuff going on. You only have 115 pounds worth of mental stuff going on. Don't let this person who is 230 or 300 pounds, whatever, this NFL player with a bunch of mental stuff going on. I'm not explaining it. I hope I'm explaining it correctly.
Well, let's say don't be naive about it, is what I'm saying.
But the thing is, I'll tell you this, being naive, not everyone has, like when a stranger comes up to me and asks me a question, whether they're asking for $1, they're asking for a cigarette, they're asking for whatever. My first thought to myself is, what does this person want from me? What is this person trying to gain? It is a not a sociopathic type of way of thinking, but it is a manipulative. It is a self-centered way of, all right, so what does this person want? That's a natural thing. I said that to say something else, but some people are just naturally not like that. Some people don't have that thought process to begin with, and they
well, here's the thing I would say. If you have any doubts that you're not like up for like dealing with like stuff that'll mess with your head, like if you're not up for anything that's going to mess with your head, you may need to sadly just have some distance and let someone else deal with it, because there's no point in getting into something that you can't handle. You know what I mean? That's just the
think anybody should be abused in any way, shape, or form?
Well, you know what? Let me put it this way. Like
narcissism is tied a lot to abuse. There's even a term called narcissistic abuse.
Sure.
What I was getting at was, I doubt you're going to say, yeah, some people deserve to be abused.
No.
But what I'm trying to get at is, how would you tell them? What advice would you give somebody who might be extremely codependent right now? What advice would you give them so that they're not being abused by someone who might be an
What I would say is if oh my God. Okay. If you are sort of trapped, if you're sort of like wrapped up in a relationship with someone who has NPD, you're probably already having some issues of yourself to be with that person. Okay. That's probably a sign. Okay. But let's just suppose that it's a work environment, let's say, and let's say you're dealing with like a coworker or somebody. Let's start with that. And then I'll try to talk about the families, but let's say it's kind of like a coworker kind of thing. I would say that if you have any doubt that you can sort of tangle with that kind of crap, because it's a lot of crazy, there's so much fantasy and narcissism, and you're not dealing with a real person. You know what I'm saying? You're just not dealing with the real person. So I would say if you have any doubt about your ability to deal with like the mind fuck of it, I would say probably distance, polite, respectful distance is probably the best policy. But if you are a person who can tangle, because there are people who can tangle, they can do it,
I believe it.
There are people who can, and so if you can, I would say, the best thing to do is to how would I say, the problem is it's so,
Yeah, and this is advice for the person that can make their life easier, not so much to make the person with NPD's life easier.
yeah, I would say, frankly, it's I'm trying to think of how, um maybe there's nothing specific, but just being around a person and letting them know that you're not like, you're not like, how would you say, it's always good, even for a person who's sick, to know there's people around them that don't mind being around them. That's always a good thing. That's a gift. It's a gift. you know and if you can understand the person's NPD and sort of forgive them for having it, and just sort of be around them and kind of let them know, just let them know implicitly that you don't mind being around them, that they're, you may not think you may not put them on a pedestal, but you at least don't mind being around them. You're giving them something indirectly that's a valuable human gift, you know.
You just
But
gotta
as
hope,
far as like
they
as
can appreciate it.
but as far as like trying to enlighten them and trying to open their eyes and stuff like that, I think sadly, I think people have to open their own eyes, and some people may never, and some people may.
Just like drug abuse, just like you said, whether it was the first step of AA is you have to admit you have a problem, or NA, you have to admit you have a problem. If someone
Yeah,
is not willing to work on themselves,
yeah, or can't even see it.
realistically, and really mean it, not just act like someone might go to therapy and
Mhm.
say, "Oh, I'm so healthy," but not actually gain anything from the therapy, just to say that they're doing it. They have to really want to work on themselves in order for something to work. I feel like that would be my advice.
Absolutely. And if you're around an NPD who actually kind of starts admitting that they have an issue, or showing signs that they're admitting it, instead of trying to open their eyes more and say, "Hey, I got some advice for you and I got some of this," I would just say, "Hey man, that's so cool that you're able to see that. I hope that you can continue with those insights, and maybe step by step that might go somewhere." And I think I'd be awesome. Like
Yeah,
just show
you should go to Wavy
show
Thoughts and Talks. No.
yeah, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, definitely,
Show
definitely.
the, like,
That,
reinforce it,
that's good. That's good. Reinforcing it in a different way instead of
Yeah.
trying to make it seem like you know more than the person.
Yeah.
Reinforcing it in a way, oh wow, that's really, you're actually really insightful. You're really, giving them some type of, I hate using the word narcissistic supply because everyone has a
Well,
different word for it, but giving them
maybe
some
try
type of
to
admiration.
or try to word it in a way that's not like feeding into the addiction, so to speak.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
you could almost say, like, not to say like, wow, not like that, but just say like, "Hey, I think that's great. I think that's great. Like,
Boom,
that's cool.
boom.
That's super cool. That's super cool, like that. And then like the more problematic, and this is where we get into the tragedy. This is the tragedy. If somebody has, like, say, a narcissistic parent or a brother, or like, say, a girlfriend or a boyfriend or something, and you're like really in a situation where breaking up could be dangerous and all that, I think in that case, I think that is kind of dangerous. Okay. And I think probably, it's not, it's no offense to the narcissist. Okay. Like, I'm not putting down the person who has NPD, but it's just a
You are
condition that
speaking something real. It's just real.
it's a condition that unfortunately can have risk, and it
Yes.
can it can really bring out, let's say, the worst in people. And so it's unfortunate, and just try to be as understanding as you can, but at the same time, I would say go get professional help.
Yeah,
you
be
know
narcissistic for yourself and find some love for your own self. Well, narcissists would be a fake love for themselves because they actually
I
don't
know,
love
I
themselves. But
know.
find some type of love for yourself. Treat yourself correctly and get yourself in a good position. And any narcissist watching, whether you care or you don't care or whatever, like you said, it might be more on a spectrum, but
Hmm.
do something good for yourself. Listen to my guy over here who's giving great advice, especially when it comes to fantastical thinking. Just find a middle ground that you can stay at where you're not hurting others and you're not hurting yourself. And if you're
Hmm.
someone going through some type of abusive situation, I will always say this, and this is no offense to
Hmm.
anyone that watches my channel that
Hmm.
has
Hmm.
NPD. You're now the third person I've interviewed, so I'm assuming
Okay.
I'm doing something right. I'm not offending people that are willing to
Hmm.
come on my channel. But
Hmm.
if you're a victim and not even quotes, if you are a victim of someone going through any type of abuse, do whatever you need to do to get yourself out of that situation, and it doesn't even matter what type of
Yeah.
acronym that person has attached to them. It doesn't matter if they have NPD, ASPD, ASD, BPD, HPD, any type of whatever, any type of acronym, it doesn't matter. Your boundaries are being broken consistently, whether you say yes to them or no to them, or you think no to them. Your boundaries being broken consistently, and you need to get yourself out of that situation ASAP.
Yeah. And but now the last thing I want to say, because I want to say this to the people who have NPD, okay? Because I feel bad for the people who have NPD, okay? And
Me too. Me too.
I include myself. I feel bad because the one real sad thing about NPD is that it's a lie. The lie is this. The lie is this idea that things are either 100% or they're not, or they're 0 or 100, 0. There's nothing in between. You know what I mean? And that's sad for me because that can trap you. That can trap you in the condition. You know what I mean? That's a sad thing. So here's the thing. I would say I don't I don't see how anybody could try to get out of NPD without faith. And when I say faith, I'm not saying religious faith. I'm saying faith. Faith means even though you can't imagine it, to know for sure that you can get better, not 100% better, okay, but get the 100% out. Getting better, you imagine getting better. Oh, I will no longer have this. No. Don't try to imagine what getting better is. Just know that you can get better. Okay. It may not be what you think, but just trust it, believe it, have the faith that someone can get better. And any NPD can develop a real self. It may not be much. Okay. It may just be working in a call center, but hey, that's real if you can do it. You know what I mean? And if you can do,
You're
if you
good at
can, and it's real and you're not faking, like I am good at this, and slowly you can build other things. You can start to have a few real friendships. You're not trying to have these fantasy friendships. You're just maybe having a real friendship, and yet slow, step by step, maybe not getting too close, maybe, but actually saying I've become a good friend in certain areas, and it may not be much, but it's something real. You know what I mean? So like, have the faith that even though you can't imagine it, you can get better, develop a real self, and you don't have to give up fantasies. It's just you're going to throw more reality in there so you have a more normal mix. It's not about dropping fantasy. It's just you may have to drop it for a while just to build up that real part, but the idea is that in the end, it's not pathological to have fantasy. You just get more reality in there. You know what I mean? So just to have the faith that yes, you can, but it may take some very step by step, but just to know that it's possible. And of course, like I'm speaking blasphemy because psychology says, oh, we haven't found there's no proven. Okay, you know what? Sometimes you have to just stop listening to what people say and just believe that you can build some small, real shit. And hey, no psychologist can take it away from you if you're actually good at something. They can't take that away from you.
Yo, John. I really, really, really appreciate you getting on my channel. I would love to have you on again. We have each other on WhatsApp. I'm definitely going to be in communication with you. I would like to pick your brain a little bit more as well, but I think we're almost on 2 hours, so I have to cut this down into 2 segments so that people actually have the attention span to watch it. But I really appreciate you getting on my channel, John. I'm gonna hit and record. Just stay on for a second.
Yeah.
But yeah, everybody. I'm gonna tag his YouTube. I don't know if you post videos.
I probably posted a couple, just very basic.
Couple. I'm gonna tag your thing on the YouTube, so people could go check it out. All right.
Okay.
So, yeah. And I appreciate everyone watching. If you watch this far, you're a real one, man. You're a real one. It's Wavy Thoughts and Talks, man.
And also, I really appreciate what you're doing because I think you're very real. I think you're very healthy for people.
I appreciate you, man. You broke my heart a few times saying some things in this interview, but let me stop.
Yeah. It's good medicine.
I'm gonna hit stop.
Good medicine. Good medicine.
It is.